the Senzo Meyiwa case about the fact that, well, not the fact, his point that, these the sense of tardiness would only happens because, and I'm quoting, this is a South Africa run by blacks. I don't think a white advocate would have had the gall to ask me that. He was referring to a postponement because one of the advocates was involved in the case, in the Cobblers Marathon, in fact. Now, there's been an apology, and I want to know, if you listen to the apology, what do you, as a member of the broader South African community, make of this apology? But first things first, let's hear him out.
I did. And I agree. My conduct was questionable and incorrect. And my wife also, who I thought, young Saba is afraid of me, told me that I should apologize to the whole of South Africa because I am worse than the attorneys who apparently steal the monies of clients in the RAF matter. She was reading a paper the other day about the fact that attorneys apparently, and they're colorless, stole about 1.5 billion of RAF funds which belong to clients. And I wish now to tender my sincerest apologies. It's contra my nature to do that. I have a son, he just died recently, who's an advocate. He's older than you, Ms. Mshololo. He was born in 1968. He died because of lymphatic cancer. I think he would have also have been disappointed at my conduct. That's why I say I heartily and unreservedly, with no qualification, apologize to my colleagues here, to the accused. They say I mustn't call you the accused. They are correct. The gentleman in front of me. And I've also been accused of being a racist. I want to just talk one or two things about me as a person without being a lawyer. I grew up in the house of Moses Kotane. Nelson Mandela used to come at home, Walter Sisulu, even Robert Sobukwe, before he broke away from the ANC. My father was involved as a member of the ANC and the Communist Party. He would be mortified to hear that I am a racist. And another thing which you may not know, my great-grandmother was a German. She was born in Bochum. Apparently he met some German priest, meaning my grandmother was a German. And I recall that she used to cut her hair, crop it short, so that people mustn't realize that she's got white blood. So I know everything about racism. I grew up also under the tutelage of the late Bishop Tutu. I was talking to his son, Trevor, yesterday at the seminary. So if you want to know me, whether I'm a racist or not, you can ask, for instance, Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, Father Mkhatshwa, Professor Lesiba Tefu, Professor Seth Cooper, Professor Bani Pichana. I used to be a member of SASO. We founded SASO 1968. I wasn't the leading light, but at Fort Hare, I was the secretary of the branch there. You can confirm that with Judge Selby Barker, who's here. And subsequently, I became a member of the Black People's Convention after the ANC was banned. And subsequently, I became a member of AZAPO, and I was the Secretary for Legal Affairs and Sport when Mrs. Khware was the president of AZAPO. I cut my teeth in politics together with Cyril Ramaphosa. He was my junior, actually, in politics. And I mean, I was tutored by people like Thabo Mbeki. He'd be shocked to hear that I'm a racist. So if people say I'm a racist, maybe I'm not aware of that. But if I trampled on anybody's toes because of my racism, despite being an adherent to the Freedom Charter, 1955, I was there in Kliptown with my father. I wish to apologize for being a racist. I'll try and mend my ways, but I can tell you, it's not a conscious thing about me to be a racist. So I apologize. And the gentleman in front of me, if you believe that I, as a judge, I'm so useless, dumb, Valuka, Moho, etc., and you think you can't get a fair trial from me, please tell me. I will recuse myself. I don't want to impose myself on people who doubt my integrity, honor, and dignity. And I mean it. If you think this judge, the way he's a racist, the way he doesn't care for the Constitution, he's not fit to be our judge, please tell me, and I'll recuse myself. Yeah, so that is the apology. My wife actually said to me, I must apologize even to the people of South Africa. And then I asked him jokingly, even the undocumented foreigners, he says, everybody. So I wish to apologize even to the politicians, because I'm told even politicians are worried about me. They want to summon me to Parliament. Don't know for what. And most graciously, I want to apologize to the Chief Justice Maya, to Chief Justice Zondo, to Chief Justice Mogoeng, and to all his colleagues. In particular, for instance, Dikgang Moseneke, Willie Seriti, because those are the contemporaries I started with.
Okay, so there you are. That's the apology coming from not just anybody, but a person who's a judge who made a comment a few days ago that certainly got, well, it definitely got people's pulses racing, and I think understandably so. I mean, I would think it should get your pulses racing too, and it definitely got my pulses racing. I'm referring to Judge Mogoeng right now. You heard that. I tell you what, I mean, the interesting part just coming out of that conversation is I found it fascinating that he spent so much time relating to who he was related to. So he spent a lot of time relating who he was related to. He also spent a lot of time telling us who he knows and who his associates were, and luminaries at that, and then apologizing to them too, and then towards the latter part making the point to say, I apologize for being a racist, but of course he made the point earlier that he was not a racist. But what I found disturbing was the fact that it's not so much him apologizing for being a racist. I don't know whether he went through the process of explaining why he thought what he thought. Because a person in his position of influence suggesting playing up a stereotype that suggests that places won't run well because the people in charge are black people is exactly the type of stereotype that we've had in apartheid South Africa and we grapple with even now. So you'd often get a person, and I hear it all the time in different spaces, to say, well, you know what, go and see this, go and see this plumber. He's a black guy who's pretty good. So what does that tell you? That the disqualifier is that actually we don't expect the person to be good, but he's good anyway. So I think from that point of view, one yes, of course, if a person apologizes, I would personally accept it. But you have to ask yourself this question, that has he gone far enough in explaining his own mentality? What informed him thinking the way he did? Because in doing that, he's now influenced an entire nation perhaps to think the same way. And that, as we know, goes contrary to South Africa's non-racial project. It is precisely a non-racial or the non-racial project that sets South Africa apart from apartheid. And we don't want to go down that road. And that's why I often try as much as I can as well to not look at people's values and ability based upon their skin color first, because that is just offside or a forward pass when it comes to South Africa. Well, I mean, that's my point. You give me yours. You can call in, you can WhatsApp, you can tweet it right away. Let's hear you as well. This is the National Pulse.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, I certainly brought the cold from Cape Town because it started getting pretty chilly on Friday in that city, but I know most parts of the northern parts of South Africa now feeling that bite. I understand there's some snow in the Lesotho area. We'll confirm all of that just now. Let's get to the Global Watch feature. So more than 4 million people have fled Sudan since the start of its civil war in 2023. It's a horrific number, isn't it? I know when I went to Cairo a year or so ago, they made the point that all the major head offices of the businesses and banks as well from Sudan are not based in Khartoum, but they're all based in Cairo because that country effectively doesn't govern itself any longer. Now, the country's former prime minister is Abdallah Hamdok, and he's pleaded with the international community to support a political solution that is aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict in that region. So why do we not have a solution? Who's calling for solutions? Does the international community talk enough about the Sudan, or has that story been overlooked? And if so, why? Ibrahim Deen is with us, who's an independent researcher and a political commentator. Ibrahim, appreciate your time as always on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, perhaps you can answer that question. I mean, is it fair to say that in fact Sudan gets less attention, that a crisis of the type that I've just mentioned with 4 million people displaced deserves?
Yes, I mean, it's Sudan and its neighbor to the south, South Sudan. Very little attention, especially now that Donald Trump is at the helm in the U.S., that we're all focusing on Russia, Ukraine, on Gaza. Sudan, 4 million displaced, 14 million internally displaced. The death toll is, the UN says at 25,000. It's more very close to probably 100,000. There's 1,000 people getting cholera every day, 170 people dying from cholera every week. So it's a conflict that, because it's on the African continent, because Sudan doesn't have much oil now since the split with South Sudan, because there's regional ructions, and because there's other conflicts and the whole Russia tariffs. China has got very, very, very little impact and very, very little coverage. And this is an area where, there are not as much interest in these, and more coverage, more publicity may actually have had and may have bigger impacts.
Okay, and the fact that there's less coverage and less interest, how does that then impact that society? That means, does the absence of coverage effectively mitigate against even further human rights abuses of people?
That's what's happening. I mean, there's credible reports that there's genocide being carried out in West Darfur, at the hands of the RSF. That there's war crimes being committed and crimes against humanity by both sides. That rape is being used as a weapon of war, food as a weapon of war. There's attacks on UN facilities, and this lack of coverage means no one puts pressure on the belligerents. So, the RSF, for example, funded by armed by the United Arab Emirates, the UAE has faced no consequences. And a lot of that is because there's no coverage, and that means no investigations into who's behind all the stuff, and then no pressure on the different actors and the different outside powers fueling the conflict.
How do we turn that around then?
I mean, I think the first thing is to we need to try and figure out a way to get regional powers away. Coverage may not necessarily be, the other conflicts, it does seem as if there's more interests, and, that's a longer term process. But, one is shows like yours do a good job in highlighting, the conflict, but there needs to be more emphasis placed on the fact that, the conflict is being fueled by outside powers, that, people outside of the African continent are actually fueling this conflict on the continent. And, maybe in doing so, we start finding a solution, at least a power sharing solution now to stop the conflict, because people are dying everywhere, and then a longer term solution. So, it's a very difficult process, as I said, but it's one of the conflicts, because there's so little interest. Maybe the continent can have a bigger role in trying to find a solution.
Well, I was just going to ask you. It's one thing, as you quite rightfully say, that this show, The National Pulse on SFM, does amplify global issues and African issues as much as we can, and it's that important. But what then is the role of, let's say, the African Union? What then is the role of say, South Africa, which, as you know, has been very clear in its position regarding the Ukraine and Russia and trying to problem solve? It's also been very clear with regard to Palestine and Israel, and taken up a leadership role in what they see as an injustice. So what role is the AU playing and can play, and what about South Africa?
See, the problem with the AU in this situation, one is the conflict. Because it's North Africa, it's the Arab League seems to be a bigger, have a bigger influence. But also in the EU's case, you got your Egypt, your Ethiopia, your Kenya, all seen as taking sides in the conflict already. And that's the big AU powers. So, your powers down south, your South Africa, your Algeria, can actually start playing a bigger role in trying to foster dialogue, foster mediation. But it needs to be, in a sense, for it to have real success, it needs to be in support of the Arab League and the Saudi initiative, aimed at trying to find a solution. But a start point is actually just, the publicity and coverage pressure. And because there's nothing that way, there's no impetus for the belligerents, one, to find a solution, but also to actually basically to mitigate or to lessen the conflict itself, and the weapons usage, the crimes, and the Troika generally, which was the US, the UN and Norway, in previous conflicts played a big role, but unfortunately, because there's Donald Trump at the helm in the US and bigger issues, these conflicts are being allowed to fester, and similar to the Cold War, lots of people died during that period.
Just the last thing, and maybe just a quick answer on this one. What is the basis of the conflict? I mean, what's the argument about?
So it started off as literally a conflict over power between two generals, roughly 2 years ago. Both part of the army, both came to power after Omar al-Bashir, and both were there to try and disempower civilians. And it's become a situation now where, especially in Darfur, it's mutated into ethnic conflict, racial conflict, tribal conflict. So, it's no longer a power, it's just about two generals. But to find the solution, you need to get the two generals to the table and find the solution between them, and then deal with the big issues.
Wow, very right.
Unfortunately, because you have to stop the conflict somewhere and then find the solution. And sometimes when you're trying to deal with the whole conflict, in fact, instead of just trying to find the solution to try and get it stopped or slowed down, you end up making the conflict endure longer.
Well, maybe we need the wisdom of Ibrahim Dean. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on the National Pulse. Well, I mean, seriously, solutions for the Sudan and in the South Sudan as well. But there's a civil war in Sudan amongst just that one group of people. How can this be allowed to continue? And 4 million people being displaced, and it's almost like the world's turning a blind eye to it. What does South Africa need to be doing? What should we do right now? Let's get the news headlines just gone 3:30.
Thanks, Ashraf. Good afternoon. I'm Kulufelo Defo. In the headlines, the SAWA Communication and Digital Technologies Minister Solly Malatsi says South Africa is taking steps to ensure that 23 million people who are not connected to the internet get connection. Authorities in KwaZulu-Natal have recovered the aircraft that went missing yesterday afternoon. The bodies of 3 of the occupants, including the pilot, have been recovered. And further afield, French President Emmanuel Macron says the oceans are not for sale. This at the opening of the United Nations Ocean Conference in the French city of Nice. Details of this and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Alexandra is a vehicle fire incident reported near London Road. The N3 northbound in Bedfordview is a crash near Van Bierum Road. And the M1 northbound in Melrose, a crash near Corlett Drive. In KZN, the N2 southbound, a crash after Sabaya Drive exit. The N3 westbound has a stationary truck reported at Key Ridge, and Stapleton Road in Pinetown is closed at the M13 highway, and that's due to structural instability. In Cape Town, Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock, and Voortrekker Road eastbound slow moving through Maitland. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
I tell you what, there's only one thing more exciting than watching, local PSL football, and that is the boardroom struggles of PSL clubs.
Especially when it comes to the Motsepe Championship.
Well, there we are.
It never stops.
Yeah, lower league, second tier, but those struggles are even more exciting than teams winning matches on the pitch.
Apparently so. Welcome back, Ashraf. A very good afternoon to you and our listeners. Well, Cape Town Spurs are taking their fight to stay in the Motsepe Foundation Championship to the Johannesburg High Court. The club has filed an urgent application to challenge a recent arbitration decision that was made by advocate Hilton Epstein. Just last week, the arbitrator dismissed a case brought by Spurs and JDR Stars, who claimed that Durban City had used a player who was not properly registered when they played against them. And one of the key issues in court will be Rule 52.2 of the NSL Handbook. Sports law expert Mandla Chabalala says that this rule was a big reason the Premier Soccer League introduced tighter regulations, and the court will now decide whether the arbitration decision should be overturned.
Again, the 40 days talk to the registration of the player, the period of registration, which legitimizes the player. Now, one can easily ask and say, what if I didn't know that this player that has been registered was improperly registered, which renders the player ineligible? But it comes to my attention after the end of the season. Will I then be suffering because of the rules? So that's why I'm saying that the 5 days of 52-3, then it creates a problem of how then do we interpret it? Because the 52-2 is very clear, 40 days after the registration period. So that's how I look at it, and maybe that's why some teams then will prefer to wait until the end of the season, maybe to check if they're safe or not. If they're not safe, then they'll come and make use of the 5 days that is provided for in the rules. So my wish is that it could be just be clear as to the 5 days. Is it now for improper registration of the player, or is it something else? Because misconduct can be so many, except for the registration of the player.
Well, still staying with football, for those that have been wondering, Cristiano Ronaldo has hinted that he will stay with Al Nassr next season. There were reports that the 40-year-old might sign with a new club and possibly play in the Club World Cup. However, Al Nassr's sporting director, Fernando Herrero, slammed down the rumors, saying that the club is working on a new deal for their CR7. Meanwhile, a big congratulations to Ronaldo and Portugal for winning the Nations League. In rugby, Sharks coach John Plumtree has opened up about the challenges of managing a squad that is stacked up with Springbok stars during a turbulent United Rugby Championship season. The Durban-based franchise finished third in their regular season before falling short in a hard-fought 25-13 semi-final defeat to the Bulls at Loftus. And Plumtree noted that the inconsistency caused by player rotation had been a key challenge throughout the season.
And I think we've showed that this year. But it's going to be a continual challenge for us to keep strengthening the squad so that we can do that. I think we've done really well this year with. You think about some of the wins that we've had against this team. With we weren't full strength by any means, and we've picked up wins. And but yeah, it's a coaching the Shark side is not for the faint-hearted. It keeps me awake at night. That's for sure.
Meanwhile, New Zealand Rugby Chief Executive Mark Robinson will step down from the role at the end of the year. The former All Blacks centre took charge of NZR in January 2020 and helped guide the organisation through the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic in the first year of his tenure. In cricket, Proteas opener Aiden Markram says that the lack of preparation for the World Test Championship final will be no problem for South Africa as they get set to take on Australia at Lords. South Africa last played a test in January when they beat Pakistan to book a place in the final, and their hopes of an extensive warm-up last week were hampered as their 4-day match with Zimbabwe was largely rained out. Now, South African cricket has a long history of coming close but failing in limited overs tournaments, but Markram felt that that would have no impact on their first WTC final. Anything's off with MVP of the weekend. I am excited. I am happy. I am still overjoyed and still celebrating Coco Gauff. This is after she became the 5th American woman to win multiple singles Grand Slam titles in the Open era at the age of 21 or younger. Not only that, she's also the first American woman to win the Roland Garros title since Serena Williams back in 2015. She actually has a new nickname, and now she's known as the Queen of Clay. Obviously, she has to be consistent in winning. However, I think she is almost getting there.
But she doesn't have feet of clay, does she?
Absolutely
that
not.
I'm sure about.
And listen, I don't even want to take the focus off her. However, I do feel Arina Sabalenka's response after losing to Coco was really, really being a sore loser, saying that she doesn't feel like she lost to Coco Gauff because Coco was better, but rather because she had 70 unforced errors.
You thought it was out of turn?
Yeah. Just congratulate your opponent and
so
move on.
Interestingly, I mean, I watched it. I watched the whole game.
Yeah.
Both days. And on the one hand, she said, I played badly.
Mm-hmm.
I played really badly.
Yeah.
What that gave me is a degree of authenticity, because sometimes people don't admit that they messed up. So she did agree she messed up. Then she said that actually Coco, the better player, won on the day. Then later on, this is not on court side.
I know, yeah.
Then she went on further to say that the person whose name I forget in the semi-final or something, she had played
Iga
Coco.
Swiatek.
She would have beaten her. Now that I think is out of turn.
Which
And then
is
she went
even
on to
more
say
important.
she didn't play well. I played poorly. Now that I think is
being a
is
sore
in poor
loser.
taste. Yeah.
And
On
then
the-
she says sorry, but she says she's honest.
Yeah.
Truth of the matter is 70 unforced errors. But
it's also nice to get that authentic honesty. We don't hear that enough. I'm not saying I like what you said. I don't like it.
I get you.
But it's nice to know when people say, like, I messed up, man.
And
Sure,
it is true.
I was poor.
For me, what you're saying is that she didn't say that when she was on court, when Coco was standing right here, but she was able to say it when she's not there. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? But anyway, Coco,
normally coaches blame the referees. You know that. That's
Yes.
another conversation.
Listen, big congratulations to Coco. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
Gordon Ramsay is back, and your favorite kitchen disasters are still somehow in business. New season, same confused chefs, terrifying walk-ins, and enough grease to fry your Wi-Fi. Watch as Gordon tries to fix the unfixable with nothing but sheer rage, British sarcasm, and an iron stomach. Kitchen Nightmares Season 8, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on S3. Come for the food, stay for the emotional damage.
In times like these, everyone is looking to save wherever they can. But you don't have to be a detective to know that with OUTsurance, you could be saving big on your car insurance. Hear it from real OUTsurance client Marius.
The great big saving that I've got, 765 Rand, 27% a month on my premium. It's so quick and easy to swap over. I am part of the OUTsurance family.
It's a no-brainer. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Saving on car insurance makes you feel like a winner. And the best part is, if OUTsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With OUTsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Turn up the heat on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2 as the contestants head out to a world-famous Winelands estate to take on the ultimate comfort food challenge, gourmet burgers. Inspired by their dads, they must create the ultimate burger to capture his spirit, with every element made by hand. Fire up the grill and catch the Tastemaster SA Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Okay, you best make a note of this, right? Now, you can apply online for Absa Ultimate Banking with 34 benefits while listening to this show, right? This is what you call the national pulse. That's my point. This is what ultimate success looks like. It's getting your daughter the ballet shoes you promised thanks to a 2,000 Rand balance booster. While Ultimate Goals is living life on your own terms with a 0 monthly fee credit card. Absa Ultimate Banking is about having it all in one account for 98 Rands per month. Your story matters. Absa. Subject to affordability and scoring benefits may be subject to limitations. T's and C's apply. Absa is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, one of the most significant events of this year clearly has been the passing of the former Pope, and then, of course, the white smoke signaling the election of a new Pope. And we know that now. It's about a month since Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected Pope and then took on the title of Pope Leo XIV, right? So in that period, he's done lots of things. He's said many things as well. It's a good time to just reflect on the 1 month in charge. Not quite the 100 days, but the 1 month with Father Professor Francesco Giordano, who's the Director of Human Life International for Rome and Europe at the Catholic University of America Rome program, the Faculty of Theology. You have a long title, Father Giordano. Much appreciate your time on the National Pulse.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. Right. So let's talk about this. I thought we'd ask you more than anybody else about 1 month since we now have the new Pope in charge. What are your reflections?
Well, I have noticed in terms of the direction that he's taking in terms of world politics, for instance, I think that's probably what's of interest to you more than the internal church politics. I think the world politics are very important to him, to you probably, and he has made some statements in terms of world peace. And on May 14th, for instance, shortly after his election, he met with the Eastern, a delegation from the Eastern churches, and he said that that he thinks we need to meet, talk, and negotiate about peace. And the pontiff appealed to all global leaders to engage in diplomacy before resorting to combat. He said at one point that war is never inevitable, and that weapons can and must be silenced, for they do not resolve problems but only increase them, he said. And those who make history are the peacemakers, not those who sow seeds of suffering. And then he also, typical of an Augustinian, he also tried to dissuade us from thinking about the Manichaean way of looking at the world, you know, with good and bad. Our neighbors are not our first enemies, he stressed, you know, but our fellow human beings, not criminals to be hated, but other men and women with whom we can speak. And so these Manichaean notions, you know, which perpetuate violence and division, only cause more violence and division. So he really has been talking about this a lot. He had also a phone conversation with Putin. He's very close to what's happening right now in Israel. So he's really, in this sense, also continuing what Pope Francis is trying to do with the situation in Gaza and the situation in Ukraine.
And Father, is that normal where the Pope, a Pope would pronounce on issues of politics as opposed to issues of church?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, it relates to church. It relates to the church because the church is global. You know, it's like it's everywhere, and he was addressing this to people in to bishops in the Eastern, in so-called Eastern churches. So churches that are directly involved with the wars right now, that's why he was addressing this. Like, you know, he was addressing the Romanians, the Ukrainians. We have bishops and priests and laity in all of these countries. We have Christians in the Middle East, and lots of Christians in the Middle East, and actually right now a dwindling population because they're fleeing. And this is a concern of the Holy Father. This has been the concern of the Pope for a long time. Of the popes for a long time, actually, what's going on in these war-torn areas. In fact, Pope Francis talked about a global war that's an ongoing war, he said, you know, step by step in pockets. So I think these are church-related and political issues. I mean, they're related to people.
How much of clout, therefore, does the Pope have? So one thing is pronouncing on issues for the reasons you've just mentioned, but how much clout does that carry?
Well, President Putin called him. That shows you that there's some clout there. You know, President Trump came to the funeral. Vice President Vance came to his first inaugural mass. I think that there is clout. I mean, he is a world leader.
How much of his personality is coming through? You know, others may have known about him privately before, we certainly don't. But how much of his personality and he's stamping his mark on the leadership of the papacy on the one hand, but then in social justice spaces, as you mentioned, how much of that is coming through already?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you said, social justice, because, I mean, that's related to the name that he chose. He chose the name Leo, and the last Leo that we know, Leo the 13th, was very much interested in social justice issues, created also the discipline of social justice, Rerum Novarum, and other such documents, and also very much a pope related who wrote on spiritual matters as well, not just, you know, everything. I mean, the whole of the human person. How has Pope Leo shown this so far? Well, I mean, he has addressed a lot of social issues. He's addressed family issues. He's addressed the family as the principal, you know, the foundational organ of society. So he's very concerned about that, you know, and yeah, I mean, he said at one point, actually, he said, marriage is not an ideal. Marriage is, you know, it's not an ideal. It's something that can be done. You can get married and have a family and you know, and with the grace of God, etc. It's not something that's like beyond our capacity. And this is a big issue in our society today. People are not getting married anymore. People are afraid to get married. And so he's trying to encourage us to rethink this and say, this is possible. Actually, it's not only possible, it's what God. And it's what's going to help our society in the long run.
Is there anything that he hasn't touched on so far in the 1 month? I mean, he's fallen short, and his absence has surprised you.
That's a good question. I'm sure there are a lot of things, I guess, that he hasn't really touched upon. He doesn't necessarily have to touch upon them with words as much as he does also with his way that he acts, how he acts, So, for instance, I mean, people can say that liturgically, also issues of prayer, liturgy, I mean, he's showing us, he has witnessed the way that that the liturgy needs to be made, I mean, I don't know. I think within a month you can sort of get a grasp of who the Pope is and what the message is. I was talking to one of the priests the other day, and we were saying how, the way that he behaves, the way he stands, the way his composure, even his composure, the way he walks, and just very calm and collected, is actually encouraging to us as priests. Because when we get nervous about things happening, sometimes we just think, well, how would he behave, And so it's just, he's a good example for us,
All right, so 1 month in, perhaps we'll have a chat 1 year in and see what you say about him then. Much appreciate your time, Father Professor Francesco Giordani, reflecting on 1 month since the election of Pope Leo XIV. This is the National Pulse.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Bafana are preparing for the World Cup qualifiers with 2 international friendlies against Tanzania on Friday, 6 June, and Mozambique on Tuesday, 10 June 2025 in Polokwane. Both matches will be at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium at 7:30 p.m. The tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 60 Rand for adults, 30 Rand for children under 12, and scholars in uniform. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X.
This Youth Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit, power, and potential of young South Africans. Join us as we dive into conversations that matter, from innovation to education and skills for the changing world. Empowering youth for meaningful economic participation. Because at SAFM, we're not just talking, we're leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, it's time for your calls, in fact. So I need to hear what you have to say because, you're on the pulse. So what would you like to pick up on? There's many things we can talk about. We can talk about the initial conversation we just had regarding that apology from the judge. What do you make of that apology? What do you make of this? Been going on in LA, Los Angeles. What do you want to touch on that? The flotilla is another example. There could be other domestic issues. The issue of Helen Zille, maybe, just maybe. Helen Zille, Mayor of Joburg. What a ring has that got to that, isn't it? And there are many other issues. Comrades Marathon, you may want to pick up with some key lessons coming out of all of that. So let's do this. Let's get to some of your calls and WhatsApp comments. And I'll pick up on that right after.
Thank you.
In fact, right after this, yeah. Okay, let's get to some of the WhatsApp. In fact, we'll get to callers first. So Mandla in Cape Town. Hi, Mandla. No, in fact, we'll get to Mandla in just a moment. Right, there's some comments that I've got. Here's one.
Hi, Ashraf. I'd like to remain anonymous. I mean, it's not even an apology. It just makes it worse. What he just said makes it worse. He should have just kept quiet. He should have just kept quiet and just left it as it is because he's insulting us even further. We never said that he was a racist. How can you be a racist to your own race? It's him undermining black professionals. That's what he did. And someone of his stature should know better. Thanks.
Well, my views are similar to yours. It's exactly that point that I brought up with you. You're perpetuating a stereotype that you, in a leadership position, you don't need to even go there. Not at all.
Something about this apology from the judge. Yeah. It's like saying that I'm not racist. All my friends are black. That's why he went to town to talk about his associates, name dropping. Anyway, let's accept his apology.
Okay, there we are. I did find it strange, that point, where he effectively name dropped a whole lot of people that he knows and has worked with as what? Mitigating factors? I mean, if you're a judge on your own, because that's why you're a judge. You've been put in a position to rationalize issues that others are very emotional over, isn't it? Mandla, let's get your thoughts from Cape Town. Hi, Mandla.
Yeah, Ashraf. Yeah. Good afternoon, my brother.
Good afternoon, indeed. Right, go for it. What's your point?
Yeah, Ashraf, on the judge that apologized. There was nothing to apologize for. He was expressing his views. He should be allowed to express his views. He must not be attacked for expressing his views. You can put facts on the table and counter his views, but that is his views, his lived experiences. He has observed the pattern of how black people do things, and he has come to such a conclusion. And he has observed how white people conduct themselves, and he has arrived at that conclusion. So you cannot attack him for raising those things. You know, Ashraf, go to the Eastern Cape, where mostly all of the people in public service is black people. You go to an office, government office, you will be helped by black people. Look at the level of service that you get there. It's bad. It's total bad. You know, Ashraf, there was a saying in the olden days where there was Transkei and Ciskei and all that you know what it means by someone's jacket will be at the office, hanged on his chair for the whole week, but that person didn't come to work for that whole week. People who have come from the villages, they come for that service. They are told, no, Mr. So-and-so is not here. He's not in today. When will it be? We don't know. The following day, person must spend his last cent.
Mandla, I'm going to let you go only because time's just not with us, right? So I hear you. You see, I'm not disputing the fact that, you know, people can run organizations into a mess. In fact, we can talk about the city of Joburg. It's a complete disaster, right? But to attribute that to only the basis of your skin color is the part that I would have a problem with. You can rather say that, in fact, these people are just shockingly poor at what they do, and we can't tolerate it. I would concur with that. But when you link it to skin color, it suggests people of a different skin color get it right. And I said this the other day. If that's the case, did you say they got apartheid right too? Because they certainly worked at it, isn't it? Okay, Mandla, thanks for that. Mzwakhe Mbuli, I know that name. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Ashraf, good afternoon. How are you?
It's been a long time, man. Good to connect.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I did welcome you when you came back last year.
Noted.
I sent messages welcoming you back.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? When the people's phone welcomes us, where am I to argue with you? Absolutely. Thank you.
Ashraf, I would be short compared to your previous speaker. Look, I just want to say something. It's up to your listeners whether they use color or not. Mm-hmm. But I spent 18 months, not 18 months as a waiting trial. And
I'm aware of it,
at some stage, there are three reasons. I think one is either the guy who arrested me, Johan Venter, shot himself dead. The second one was Albert Ramela, who overdosed tablets. There was the second cause of delay. The third cause of delay, that is why it's 18 months, is because there was a Rugby World Cup competition. So the there was a request, a formal one written, that they needed the court to adjourn so that the guys, I don't want to talk about color here, but the way the defense wanted to go and watch the Rugby World Cup.
All right, so quickly, what do you deduce from that? I mean, based upon what you just told me.
I think it was unfortunate that I happened to be black of African origin, and these guys were all Afrikaner. So I'm just saying that if it didn't get the news, it was never in the media, but it's something that happened. So I'm saying when I heard something about Comrades Marathon, but for me, my situation was worse because I'm talking about a long period of time that people had to start from the beginning of the World Cup, or in fact, to the last, the knockout stages. They were not there. I stayed, obviously, in prison, waiting for these guys to completion and the final of the World Cup rugby. Then they resumed the thing. So I'm just saying that people should know that such things do happen. It happened to me in South Africa.
Okay, then the Boks go on to win the World Cup, which means you stay longer. I'm looking at the contradictions. Thanks for that call. Certainly very enlightening.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Thanks for connecting here to us on the National Pulse. I'll have more on that and any of the other big issues that really presses you, the issues that you feel strongly enough that you want to get off your chest. But for now, let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock.
Top stories. The SAWA ATM installs new leader and UN Oceans Summit kicks off. Good afternoon. I'm Kolofelo Defo. Professor Siza Nonqunga has been announced as the new president of the African Transformation Movement, replacing Vuyolethu Zungula. The party announced the move in a statement, saying the decision was made by the National Executive Committee to separate the roles of party advocacy and organizational building. Zungula will focus on the ATM's parliamentary duties, whilst Nonqunga will focus on the party's growth. Zungula has been president for the ATM for 7 years. Nonqunga is the founder of the party. Here's the ATM's Zamanjona.
Under President Zungula's stewardship, the ATM has grown from its modest beginnings to a formidable force advocating for economic transformation and the upliftment of the marginalized communities across our nation. President Zungula continues as party leader in Parliament, where he will continue his tireless work in advocating for the emancipation of the downtrodden and ensuring that their voices are heard. As we welcome Professor Siza Nonqunga into his new role as president, we acknowledge his profound vision for the ATM.
South Africa is taking steps to ensure that the 23 million people who are not connected to the internet get connected. That is according to Communication and Digital Technologies Minister Solly Malatsi. Malatsi was speaking at the G20 meeting by member states in Polokwane in Limpopo. Malatsi says it is important to get the whole population connected to the internet.
South Africa has close to 23 million people who are not connected to the internet, and our focus is, one, as a department, to make sure that we get communities connected so that they are active in the digital economy, but also to encourage young people to move towards e-education, to encourage entrepreneurs to build and grow businesses digitally. And also, if you take into consideration the reality that the future of work has changed. In this day and age that we live in, a lot of things happen online, but in order to be active online, you need access to that connectivity.
Meanwhile, the Brazilian delegate Guilherme Pereira says the country can help African countries to connect to the internet.
I don't think Africa is getting anything wrong. What we do need, there is more work to be done. It's a matter of quantity, not exactly of quality, from what we see in Brazil. We've had experience back in Brazil providing connectivity, meaningful connectivity to everyone. And as Brazil, we are more than willing to help the South African presidency and also African countries in achieving that. Investment is always necessary.
Authorities in KwaZulu-Natal have recovered the aircraft that went missing on Sunday afternoon. The bodies of 3 of the occupants, including the pilot, have been recovered. The aircraft left Durban's Virginia Airport at around 3 p.m, destined for Ladysmith in the Midlands of the province, but did not reach its destination. Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Centre had reported that the aircraft was tracked flying over Ladysmith, heading south towards Greytown. The Provincial Department of Transport spokesperson Dabezinhle Sibia elaborates.
In the meeting that we had a couple of minutes ago with the rescue team under the leadership of the Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Centre, together with the SA Civil Aviation Authority, they informed us that unfortunately the 3 passengers that were in the aircraft, unfortunately they've died. And we are in touch with the family of one of the pilot student that was in the aircraft. The MEC Sibongiswa Duma has expressed his deepest condolences.
Still in KZN, the South African Weather Service has issued an alert level 2 weather warning of disruptive snows for areas in the Midlands of the province. A number of other alerts are currently active across the province, including a level 4 warning for damaging winds and strong waves along the coastal areas. Spokesperson for the Provincial Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Sanzelwe Mzila, says Provincial Disaster Management Centre is on high alert.
The MEC has engaged a number of municipalities as well as part of the department's disaster management plan to ensure that public facilities are made open should the need arise. We've not had any incident right now, but our teams are monitoring the situation on the ground. In terms of snow, we got reports yesterday of frost build up in a number of roads, and just this morning the Weather Service issued a weather warning indicating that there's a level 2 snow that is expected within the areas that are surrounding the Drakensberg. These are parts of Utugela and parts of the Herikwala district, and maybe some areas as well just within the Umgungundlovu district.
And finally, further afield, French President Emmanuel Macron says the oceans are not for sale. He made the comments at the opening of the United Nations Ocean Conference in the French city of Nice. Macron, the co-chair of the meeting, has called for a moratorium on deep-sea mining, a course of action he deems necessary. The summit is intended to rescue the seas from overfishing, pollution and climate change. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has highlighted some of the concrete goals for the meeting.
I also call on all countries to agree on an ambitious and legally binding treaty on plastic pollution this year. It is also essential to successfully conclude the agreement on fisheries currently discussed at the World Trade Organization.
The top story, the SAWA professor Sizano Ngunga has been announced as the new president of the African Transformation Movement, replacing Vuyolethu Zungula. The party announced the move in a statement, saying their decision was made by the National Executive Committee to separate the roles of party advocacy and organizational building. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I'm Kolofelo Defo.
In sports this hour, Middendorp slams silence SA football. Tetedijane calls on Athletics South Africa to implement UIF life insurance for athletes, and Boyson jumps 296 places in WTA rankings after French Open run. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R24 westbound has a crash reported after Edenvale exit, the N3 southbound in Alexandra, a vehicle fire incident reported near London Road, and the N3 northbound in Bedfordview, a crash near Van Buren Road. In KZN, South Coast Road is where truck congestion is reported between Bayard Road and the M7 highway. The N2 southbound, a crash after Sabaya Drive exit and Stapleton Road in Pinetown is closed at the M13 highway due to structural instability. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound slow moving towards the N1 Koeberg interchange, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound slow moving towards Hospital Bend, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The land is their legacy, but in season 3 of Yellowstone, that legacy is under fire. Kevin Costner returns as John Dutton, fighting to protect his ranch, his family, and everything that can't be bought. More enemies, deeper betrayal, and the battle for the West, it's only just begun. Yellowstone Season 3. This land was won with blood, and it'll take more to keep it. Saturdays at 9:30. Starts 24 May. Only on S3. Open up.
It's a game of two halves, represented by two national flags. And both nations are chasing victory to bring joy to their citizens. This is more than just an international friendly. It is the Southern African Derby. Mzansi's Bafana Bafana face the Mambas of Mars. Catch the incredible action of African football. South Africa versus Mozambique on Tuesday, 10 June at 7 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Interesting, talking about service delivery or the lack thereof. I mean, I've just heard of a horrific story in the Crosby Brixton area that happened in the early hours of this morning, where a family's home caught fire, and then of course the local community rallied around them to try and put the fire out, but there's no water in that area, so they couldn't do so. So of course you call the fire engine, emergency services, and the ambulance, and they don't come on time, and they come very, very late. Now, you may remember, I had a chat with Catherine Constantinidis a few months back, and she made the same point, that you could not believe how long it took for the fire engines to come in. In fact, you found there was a massive undersupply. So you have a fire at home, you're in trouble if you actually don't have someone to assist you. So anyway, my point is this horrific story of this house on fire, people pleading for help, and no fire engine, no ambulance, and or coming much, much later, and there's no water. And I don't know how many, there were 4 or 5 people who were ill there, and they all had to be rushed to hospital. And I understand this could change, that at least what I know is the mother and one child has passed on, but all the others, quite a few of them are critical. Yeah, that happens just far too often. So basically, you're a sitting duck if you have a fire at your home and you have no other quick recourse. And I understand that the fire brigade service, fire engine service between Crosby and where the fire engine service is not more than 2 kilometers away. It's probably the shortest distance you can get, opposite Garden City. So that's what happened. And you know what's sad is we're hearing far too many of these type of stories every single day in our country. Okay, by the way, we'll chat to Tebogo Ditsejo, and he's going to give his thoughts about reputational damage, if anything, regarding Judge Mogatleng's comments or his apology as well. So looking forward to that conversation. There's also talk about snow, or what they call the issuing of 2 orange, 6 yellow level warnings over many parts of our country. We'll talk about that just now. But firstly, let's go to Athol Trollip, the leader, the Action SA's parliamentary leader. We do so because Action SA has proposed constitutional amendments aimed at overhauling what the party believes are key provisions that have been misused, and this is important, to fuel South Africa's illegal immigration crisis. So let's find out what is their position on this one. With me, Athol Trollip, Action SA parliamentary leader. Athol, appreciate your time as always on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thanks for your time, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So let's take it 2 ways. A, what is the problem? And B, what is the solution?
Okay, Ashraf, thanks very much. I think there are many problems in South Africa, but in this regard, with our constitutional amendment proposal to the Constitutional Review Committee, is the fact that we have it's a guess, between 5 million and maybe 10 million illegal immigrants in South Africa. Nobody knows exactly how many there are because our border control is so woeful and people just come and go as they please in our country. And it's causing immense problems, not only problems of unemployment, but also crime is going up because people that aren't registered and there's no record of them and they have no documentation and there's no biometrics of millions of these people in this country. We see criminality going the wrong direction completely. And our problem is that we believe that our Constitution is open to abuse and it has been misappropriated. And the first part of the Constitution is the preamble that says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. Mm-hmm. And that's where we believe there's a problem. We believe that there should be much stricter classification of who South Africa belongs to. And we believe South Africa belongs to its registered South African citizens, permanent residents that have legal documentation, naturalized South Africans that have legal documents, and then we've got immigrants that come into this country legally. They bring investment, they bring scarce skills, and there's certain prerequisites around that. So that's who we believe should be benefiting
from the preamble of our Constitution. Not every single person who lives in South Africa, because many of them...
That makes the point that, people... surely people who are in South Africa illegally shouldn't be in South Africa, isn't it?
That's the absolute point, and you're the first person who's interviewed me who's come out and said that up front. So what we're saying is nothing new. We are saying that we're a sovereign state, we're a constitutional state that gives rights to our citizens, and we believe that our citizens, South African citizens, and people who are recognized by law should be at the front of the queue when it comes to service delivery, not the back of the queue. Now, let me give you two examples. In the Bill of Rights, there's a provision for housing for South African citizens and emergency temporary accommodation. Now, we know that many foreign residents or illegal foreigners are accessing housing and accessing emergency temporary housing. And then the other two that are probably the two biggest problem areas is that when it comes to education, Section 27 of the Bill of Rights, it says, I beg your pardon, 27 is access to health care. What we've seen in Gauteng, for example, between 40 and 70% of people in the Gauteng health system and in health institutions are illegal immigrants. And what we've seen, there have been so many instances of people going to hospitals to give birth. They've come across the border to give birth in the South African health system. And when South African mothers go to give birth, the beds are full and they give birth on the floor in hospitals. Now, we're saying that that's totally unacceptable.
So
South African citizens must come first.
All right, so how do you think we got to that? Because let me get it right in terms of my own understanding. I think the country needs diversity, and I think people from different parts of the world, from the African continent or Europe or Asia or even the Americas, I think they add so much value to our country in terms of diversity. But that's not the same thing as saying a person must come here and be allowed to come here illegally. Now, explain what is your understanding of the fact that once they come here illegally, that means however they've tripled the system, right? Then they have all the rights that others have in terms of healthcare and even education, something we've talked about. I mean, what is your understanding of that? Because that leads me on to what your proposal is to make changes.
Well, first of all, we are totally in support for any form of legal immigration. We understand that we live in a global village and that skills go wherever skills are needed, and that the world is getting smaller and smaller, and we want to attract skills and we want to attract investment. So we support that 100%. But as soon as you add illegal immigration, the word illegal before immigration is where the problem comes, because if you're here illegally, you're living below the law or outside of the law, and you've come here by breaking the law. Now, that is unacceptable, and that's the first step. The second one is, Ashraf, recently the Constitutional Court ruled that children of immigrants can have access to schooling. Yes, no problem, we believe that. But you can't have access to schooling of illegal immigrants' children, because then you will have South African parents whose children cannot get a desk at the school to access the education provided for in the Bill of Rights.
Okay, so I think your point is very clear.
There must be a prioritization.
All right, so your point is very clear, right? So then in terms of your constitutional changes, and of course it's only proposals at the moment, it's a long road as you know, what are your proposals and how do you see that playing out?
So our first proposal is that we understand that the preamble takes care of the history of this country, where before 1994, people had second-rate and third-rate citizenship. So the preamble was there to say it belongs to all who live in it. We support that and we endorse it. But we believe there should be a new wording to classify what it means to be South Africa belongs to its citizens and legal immigrants, people who are here recognized by law, and that we must exclude illegal immigrants. And we're not saying that an illegal immigrant who falls ill or has an accident that we must just turn our backs on them. No, we believe in Ubuntu in this country, but we must put South African citizens first. So we can't have South African citizens at the back of the queue with foreign illegal immigrants at the front of the queue. That is unacceptable.
How are you going to drum up support on that one? I mean, I understand it's the first line, preamble of the Constitution, but that would require the support of many political parties. How are you going to get that support?
Well, it would require a 70% support to make that constitutional change.
Yeah.
And, I recall when Herman Mashaba was the mayor of Joburg, he was the first mayor to take back hijacked buildings from illegal immigrants. And people called it xenophobia back then. But now all the political parties are talking the same language. So, I've been in Parliament now for a year, been back in Parliament for a year, and most of the political parties are talking about the issues around illegal immigration and the troubles that is giving us as a country. So I believe we'll be pushing against an open door with most of the political parties, and we will canvass them and we will campaign for putting South Africans first. And those that don't want to put South African first, we'll tell the public why they won't support us.
Just a last one and a very quick answer on this one. Do you get a sense that the mood is changed? Not so much because South Africa is anti-immigrant, and again, I will make the point that you can't adopt that policy. But South Africa's failing service delivery and public health care and other things has forced a rethink in terms of how we approach this.
Absolutely, Ashraf. The mood has changed, and it's changed globally. It's not just a South African problem, but South Africa has a manifest problem which is causing grave challenges for South African citizens, and South African citizens have had enough.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. I don't know whether enough is the normal word, but much appreciate your time. I wonder if others agree with the position of Athol Trollip and his party, Action SA, in terms of effectively changing that preamble, the opening line, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, as opposed to South Africa belongs to all its citizens and those who are legally living in this country, as opposed to all who live in it. I welcome your thoughts. We're going to talk about the weather in a moment.
Bigger office, more staff, a new location? Growth takes investment, and a business term loan from Standard Bank gives you the capital you need to expand on your terms. With competitive interest rates, fixed monthly repayments, and a dedicated support team, you can plan ahead with confidence. Keep your business growing with a Standard Bank business term loan. Visit standardbank.co.za/business loans to apply. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
They say sharing is caring, but not in football. Bafana Bafana and Club M refuse to share points. They're both hunting for vital points. This is the Hollywood Bets South Africa 2025. Catch the spectacular action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mauritius. This Tuesday, 10 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what youth-focused issues the G20 should incorporate ahead of the summit. And we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Okay, let's talk about the weather. With me is Leklogonolo Tobela, who's the meteorologist at the South African Weather Service. Leklogonolo, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. You know, we never ever speak to you when things are just normal. Something has to happen for us to talk to you. So let's talk about the 2 orange and the 6 yellow level warnings.
Yeah, good afternoon. I mean, you have my number. You can call when even nothing is happening. Yeah. But yeah, so we have disruptive rain over most parts of the Eastern Cape, especially along the coastal areas into the adjacent interior of the Eastern Cape. The high-lying areas of the Eastern Cape, we have disruptive snow that's expected to result in some navigation around those areas to be difficult, especially for people who are driving. I've seen a lot of videos, people are chasing snow, so they should be careful with doing that because it's quite intensive around those areas. I mean, we already have the N6 around Graaff-Reinet that has closed due to the snow. And we're still expecting disruptive rain into tomorrow around areas in the coastal areas of the Eastern Cape into the interior, as well as disruptive snow that's still persisting. This is expected to stretch to the southern parts of the Free State overnight into tomorrow afternoon, as well as the extreme western part of KwaZulu-Natal, which will cover the Midlands. Some damaging winds, strong interior winds are expected over KwaZulu-Natal for tomorrow into the eastern half of the Eastern Cape, but we also have some high waves that are expected along the east coast, which might result in navigation at seas will be difficult. So if you have any coastal activity, do take caution around those areas. Good news, on Wednesday, we start seeing some clearing, especially over the central interior, just a 30% chance of rain and showers. But bad news would be that the cold will still be around the areas. But one thing I can mention is that on Thursday, we start to see a temperatures starting to get to a normal winter temperature over most parts of the country. Just a 30% chance of rain and showers still expected along the coastal areas of KwaZulu-Natal into Thursday. For tonight into tomorrow, we're expecting cold temperatures, especially over most parts of Gauteng. Temperatures are expected to be very, very cold. I'd say the coldest we've had since the winter started in parts of Gauteng. We're expecting 1 degree in Vereeniging, 12 is the maximum tomorrow, 12 is the maximum tomorrow in Johannesburg, as well as the 15-degree mark in Pretoria. Cold temperatures are still expected to persist over the Western Cape and parts of the Free State and areas in the Northwest. So do take care and make sure that you're warm.
So here's the last thing that's probably the most important thing for everybody, besides the fact that it's cold, right? Is it going to rain as in storms anywhere, and is it going to snow?
Yeah, so disruptive rain is expected over the Eastern Cape as well as KwaZulu-Natal. That's where we're having our most adverse weather conditions between today and tomorrow. The snow will be disruptive mainly over most areas in the Eastern Cape as well as the southern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. That's where we're expecting severe conditions. You did mention that we have an orange level 6, which is quite significant in terms of the impact that it will cause. It will cause roads to close. Already we have roads that have closed because cars can travel well over those areas, so it's quite unsafe for people to travel around those areas. Blue Mountain Pass is also about to be closed because it's not safe to drive around those areas.
Okay, point made. Well, we'll call you once again when there's some adverse weather conditions to talk about. Thank you for your time, meteorologist at the South African Weather Service, Lekhlolo Tobela. So there are some parts of the country may have snow, but certainly not in the major metros. I don't think so, as may have been suggested earlier on. What is rather, overcast, I suppose, is our political future, and there's not a day that goes by that we don't really know. Like, for example, the point about Helen Zille. Seriously making a play to become the mayor of the city of Joburg? Would Joburg buy into that? And more. Let's hear about it after this.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Okay, I want to hear what you have to say. Let's talk about foreigners, picking up on the conversation we just had with Athol Trollip, mastermind in Mpumalanga. Go for it, you're live on the air.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf and your listeners of SFM. Yes, Mr. Trollip is talking a very fundamental point about these people of other countries here in this country, the refugees. Because, Mr. Ashraf, you see, the higher rate of the unemployment in this country will never end. They can promise whatever the organizations when they campaign to say we will open the world. You see, they organizing people from China, from in that country overseas. Then they coming here. Once they are here in the country, these people they coming to invest in South Africa. But now they hire people from other countries, Zimbabwe, Maputo. The people of South Africa, they are outside.
If you listen to what Athol is saying, he's not talking about hiring people. He's talking about people who managed to come to the country illegally. That means effectively undocumented, whether they've jumped the fence, whether that's the target. That's the people that he's targeting.
Yes, and then you see those people who are undocumented. They are also still a big problem because in the budget, when they're talking about the budget, for an example, Ashraf, they're talking about 65 million people, but there is more than, as he said, even 10 million people over. They will, once that budget is allocated or distributed to the provinces, also these people must benefit in that water, electricity, and they are not in the budget. So they are very problem of these people. Let's try our president to try to just these people have all of them. They must demonstrate it in the proper way to become inside and not coming here even to nothing. Okay. You're doing a job.
Mastermind, you made your point, like the mastermind. Thank you for that. Right in Frontline KZN, go for it. Hello. Yeah, go for it. Hello. Hello. We need to pause there. Can't talk to you now. Here's one. Ashraf, you sound like you're trying to cover up for this rubbish illegal aliens. They must leave our country. I can never call people rubbish. I mean, I really can't. And the focus really is on undocumented as opposed to people who are from all around the world who live in our country. I think, in principle, the diversity is fine. There's no cover-up. That's just my opinion. And I think many others may agree. The issue of allowing people undocumented in our country, no matter what, that is a weakness in our system. I mean, there's no way, let me do something simple to you. You try and have a team of 11 players playing football, and then they all must be registered, and you say, but these 3 players were not registered, they can play anyway. Which club allows that? That's the focus. Not saying don't get the player from Egypt or Congo. Let them play. 4:30, here's the news headlines.
Thanks, Ashraf. Good afternoon. I'm Kolofelo Tefo. In the headlines this hour, the CEO of the Southern African Agri-Initiative, Francois Rousseau, says government should take greater measures in dealing with the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. 7 detainees and police have sustained injuries after police truck overturned on the R56 between Richmond and Ikopo in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. And Professor Caesar Nonunga has been announced as the new president of the African Transformation Movement, replacing Vuyolwethu Zungula. Details at 5 with Greg House.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 southbound in Centurion, queuing towards Trichard Road exit, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg, slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and the R24 eastbound in Kempton Park has a crash before the R21 Airport Interchange. In KZN, the N3 westbound queuing towards Cliffdale, and the N2 southbound has a crash after Sabai Drive exit. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound has a crash at Durban Road, Voortrekker Road eastbound queuing between Salt River and Maitland, and Govan Becky Road in Khayelitsha has heavy traffic between Symphony Way and Swartklip Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Okay, let's talk about Cape Town Spurs fighting for their future.
Yeah, Cape Town Spurs head coach Ernst Middelsdorp has spoken out again, this time with a follow-up statement criticizing the ongoing silence from football authorities after his recent call for integrity in the game. In a follow-up statement, he says that there's been no response and no action to serious concerns about match fixing, dodgy decisions, and pressure on coaches and referees. And he's now calling on Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie to step in, saying that the soccer industry isn't moving forward and it's just pretending. Meanwhile, Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce says that he's looking to continue South Africa's evolution as they take on Mozambique in an international friendly that is set at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane tomorrow night at 7:30. Bafana played out to a goalless draw with Tanzania on Friday evening, and it was a valuable opportunity for Bruce to assess a number of new players, especially in the absence of Mamelodi Sundowns regulars who are gearing up for their participation in the FIFA Club World Cup, which kicks off this coming weekend. Meanwhile, Manchester United's Christian Eriksen and Johnny Evans are amongst the list of players who were released by the Red Devils. Eriksen featured 108 times for the club and scored in his final appearance in the final game victory over Aston Villa. In athletics, 2-time Comrades Marathon champion Teteri Jana has urged Athletics South Africa to introduce unemployment insurance fund and life insurance benefits for the elite runners. This follows the tragic death of his close friend and Nedbank running club teammate David Manja, who collapsed during training in Northwest last month. Now, Dijana highlighted how the lack of stable employment leaves many athletes with no choice but to continue training and compete continuously, even when unwell, in order to provide their families.
I would say maybe they can, like, especially those top runners like us. Maybe I'm just saying maybe they can have, maybe because we are not the same. Like some of us, some of the other runners, they don't have money. Maybe if you are a runner and you are a top runner, maybe they can have maybe like some of a policy, you see, so that maybe if or something like UIF Nyana, so it's similar to that. So if let's say maybe if I die, my kids can have something out of that. But it is impossible. But it's my wish so that we can help the families for that athlete who has passed on.
In rugby, Jake White says that the Bulls are holding a lotto ticket going into Saturday's URC final against Leinster at Croke Park and is banking on his senior players to make it count. The Bulls face a formidable Leinster side playing its first URC decider coming off a big win over defending champions Glasgow. White's troops left the Republic yesterday and are scheduled to hold a recovery session today in the Irish capital as they target a maiden URC title. In tennis, France's Louise Boyson, a surprise French Open semi-finalist, has jumped 296 places in the latest WTA rankings released today to a career high of 65. Aryna Sabalenka and Coco Gauff hold the top two spots after they run to the finals in Paris, where Gauff defeated the world number one Sabalenka in 3 sets. Boyson received a wildcard entry a year after undergoing surgery on her left knee, playing her first Grand Slam ranked 361st in the world. Iga Swiatek, on the other hand, who's the defending 3-time French Open champion, falls 2 places to 7th after her semi-final defeat to Sabalenka. I think it's a great one for Boyson. Ashraf, I was actually reading the remarkable story about her, that she was able to play at the Roland Garros because of crowdfunding.
Amazing. I mean, that just shows you, right?
And she made it up to the semifinals. So good for her. And I think she's one to look out for the future.
And I mean, what about what's her name? KG, right? Who she won? Have I got it right?
Doubles.
She won the doubles again.
Yes.
And I mean, what's her name? I think Discovery now sponsors her to a large degree. I stand to be corrected.
Yes.
But what is her name? Yeah. What is her name? The marketer who's played a huge role for Amy Cassarati.
Amy, yes.
Huge role in growing. It was never going to happen a few years ago.
Absolutely.
Which
And look how far she is right now.
That no matter what the institutions are, we need individual interventions of people who have to literally take them along their journey and say, I'm going to make it happen for this person.
And KG has really been outspoken about specifically wheelchair tennis athletes, that not enough sponsorship is there. She's been trying to be out there to just say, listen, if sponsors can come on board, there's so much that we can do. Look at where she is right now, and just winning another Roland Garros title, doubles title. It just says how far she's come. I was really hoping she'd go all the way for the singles side of things, but we still appreciate her work.
Anyway, love her work and love what she does, and there's just so many talented South Africans we have, right? Anything else you want to pick up on?
No, nothing for now.
Okay, that's fine. I have to tell you this much. I watched the semi-final, the women's semi-final. I'm not a tennis nut. I only watch the majors, okay? I watched the semi-final, the final on Saturday, and then I watched the final on Sunday. And I think I missed 15 minutes of the Saturday game, and I probably missed 2 minutes of the 5 hours, and I don't know how much of the Sunday. I was completely hooked.
Yeah.
And I did tweet about Alvarez and his escape from Alvarez. Those who know movies will understand what I'm talking about. Because he saved 3 match points. Oh, my goodness.
I missed yesterday's one because I was working, but I also watched the Sinner versus Djokovic. Oof.
No, that was history. That's semi-finals. That's
man, oh man.
If you watch yesterday's game, I don't know why you worked. You had to get your priorities right. But anyway, one of the great games you would see in your life ever. Yeah.
My priorities were right. I made money.
They say sharing is caring, but not in football. Bafana Bafana and Club M refuse to share points. They're both hunting for vital points. This is the Hollywood Bets SAFA Cup 2025. Catch the spectacular action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mauritius. This Tuesday, 10 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric, mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
All right, now, here's some breaking news, okay? Pinky, a 60-year-old woman, slashed 870 Rand a month off her car insurance premium. You got that? Pinky switched to Outsurance and now saves a mind-blowing 870 Rand a month on a 2020 Kia Seltos 1.6. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. Licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's and information online.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, you're on the pulse. I know that. I want to hear you just now. Makwe Masilela is with us as well, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. And we're going to get local and global in a moment. But first of all, some thoughts from Oceania, right? Makwe, yeah.
With record sales volumes of 5.1 million cartoons. And the revenue was up 2.9% due to increased sales, volumes of what we call it canned foods, fish meal and fish oil, and also egg. And revenue growth was offset by lower sales pricing for fish meal and fish oil. Profits as headline earnings per share down 44%, and that's mainly due to lower fish oil prices, and net debt up 42%, mainly to fund working capital requirements. And dividend per share was down 43%. And as of today's trade talks between US and China came at a crucial time for both the economies, with China grappling with deflation and trade uncertainty dampening sentiment among US business and consumer, preempting investors to reassess the dollar's safe haven status. US and China trade negotiations will be a further effort to diffuse tensions over rare earth minerals and also advanced technology. And we saw Chinese exports rising less than expected last month as the worst drop in shipments, that is to the US in more than 5 years, counteracted strong demand from other markets, and trade talks between US and China might have to go on for some time before traders can decide whether or not there's actual progress been made. However, most investors remain hopeful that there will be some positive results, and locally our clothing retailers are planning to open at least 600 more outlets next year. That is the likes of Pepco, Mr. Price and the Foschini Group, while our food retailers like Pick n Pay and Spar expect muted stock growth. Oil traders hope that a deal in London between US and China could boost the global economic outlook and subsequently fuel demand. Brent crude is flat at $66 a barrel. Gold continued to trade up regardless of those talks in London, and we've seen that platinum is up almost to a 4-year high because of expectations of tight supply. Gold global markets are mixed with the JSE flat, and the rand, as we're talking, firmed to 0.3% against the dollar 17.71. 23.98 against the pound, in 2019 against the euro.
And you got all that. Thanks for that, Mark. We'll connect again tomorrow. Don't forget, Jimmy comes up about 6 to 7. Jimmy Muyaha with the SFM market update. Do not miss that 1 hour of the very important news in business and markets, all in South Africa and around the world.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Lots of people want to talk about the issues of the foreigners and foreign nationals and the comments of Athol Trollip, and it just seems like it's hit a nerve, maybe understandably so. Not saying it's good or bad, but it certainly has hit a nerve. Let's move on to another issue. I'm going to get to your calls and WhatsApp comments within a couple of minutes, by the way. But in the meantime, it's been a busy time for many people in South Africa in different fields, and one of them is the Minister of Education. Now, the Minister of Education, Sibiwe Kwarube, is leading a dialogue, in this case, not delegation, dialogue, on entrepreneurship education in the city of Ekurhuleni. And the dialogue is aimed at addressing youth unemployment. One of the things the minister highlighted is the importance of examining how big economies approach skills development to improve South Africa's education system. Listen to what she had to say.
But ultimately, we've got to be a country that puts a lot of premium on skills acquisition. If you look at big economies, like German economy, for instance, where they're looking at how do they create learners from a very young age who are skills orientated, you can start to see that these are the economies that are thriving. These are the economies that have created very low unemployment rates. And so as a country, we need to also turn a corner and think about how do we inject the idea of skills development in our education system. And this is why programs like this are so absolutely critical, because it is part of that work that you'll be doing here for the next 3 days that will start to shape the conversation, not only in this room, but outside of this room, to say that we need young people who are skills orientated. But also, these are not just skills for today, these are the skills for the future. Of course, many people say to me, we've got fundamental problems, we still have infrastructure challenges, we still have children who cannot read for meaning. And I say, yes, absolutely. But the world is already having a conversation about how do we leverage the advent of artificial intelligence for the world of work in the future. We cannot leave South African children behind out of that conversation. So we have to, in tandem, be considering all of these things at the same time. And so this is why this program is so incredibly important. This policy dialogue is also not a side conversation about optional add-ons in the curriculum. I've been very clear that the curriculum as we know it is stable, and stable curricula is important. So what we're saying is we're not wanting to crowd the curriculum further. We're not saying we want to add additional subjects. We're saying, what do we have on offer already that we can augment, that we can make sure that even the learners who go to schools of skills, they're able to move between the Department of Higher Education and Training, DBE, with seamlessly between the two departments and able to acquire skills as and when they need them. But also we have to start thinking about how do we create not only job seekers, but innovators, job creators, people who are going to go on and be industry leaders. We can't do that if we are not already priming ourselves as policymakers about how do we make sure that the curriculum is responsive to that. And so our deliberations at this policy dialogue must align with our drive to improve, however, foundational literacy and numeracy. And the reason why, you may ask, you may say, this is about entrepreneurship. How does it really pertain to even the priority of numeracy and literacy? But ladies and gentlemen, we know the statistics, and they're quite stark. And for me, all of these things are interconnected if you are looking at the education system in its entirety. It is important that while we are having these programs and these interventions, that we don't lose sight of the importance of the foundations of learning. If we don't get the foundations of learning right, these things will all not amount to the kind of returns we want to see. So we want to see 0 to 4-year-olds being able to read and being able to be acquainted with the skills of literacy and numeracy. Because we also know that the research shows us that a number of children in South Africa who get to grade 3 are actually only developmentally in grade 1. That a number of children who get to grade 4, by the time they turn the age 10, at least 8 out of 10 of them are said to not be able to read for meaning in any language. Now that's a literacy crisis. So you are sitting on your further education and training side with a skills deficit and a skills hole that you need to plug in, but also at the beginning of, at the foundations of learning, you are also sitting with a literacy crisis. So as I said, that the moment is urgent and you've got to do all of these things at once, but we have to get the foundations of learning right, because we know that when children are well, they are able to read and read for meaning. They're able to take on more difficult subjects, maths, science, accounting, gateway subjects that are needed by the economy, that are needed.
Well, she's right, isn't it? You just wonder, that issue about getting the foundations right. I've heard that for 30 years. And I'm not talking about the country's foundations, I'm just talking education. Why are we going so wrong? Hopefully, the minister has a point.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
They say sharing is caring, but not in football. Bafana Bafana and Club M refuse to share points. They're both hunting for vital points. This is the Hollywood Bets SAFA Cup 2025. Catch the spectacular action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mauritius. This Tuesday, 10 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Let's get to some of your comments, right? Yeah. People are talking about the judge and they're talking about the foreigners. If I can pick up two trends, not much being spoken about regarding Sudan, surprise, surprise. Nothing much about the USA and LA and what's happened there. Not much about the flotilla so far. And not much about the fire that I referred to in the, I think the Brixton Crosby area, where at least 2 people have died because, again, no fire engine to come and assist, no water, no nothing, right? Imbawana in Mahikeng, go for it, hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. In fact, you want to talk about the LA protests, yeah? Go for it.
Yes, you see, this is a protest that Netanyahu and Trump caused. And this is going to be a global protest, and it's going to be violent because people have been protesting for peaceful for so long, and they are not heard. Now, this time, they are going to use violence because the same leaders are the same leaders that are causing foreigners to be in South Africa. They're leaving their countries because of the wars that the Americans are causing. So this blame is not only for the foreigners themselves, it's for the president, including Trump, because he's the one who is causing the problem around the globe. So this time is happening right there in Los Angeles.
Okay, got that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. In fact, Trump is particularly unhappy with what he calls these foreigners, and is like, I need to pack them back out of this country. Anyway, Imbawana and Mahikeng, thank you for that. Let's get to Durban. Abi, go for it. Hello, Abi.
Oh, Ashraf.
Yeah.
You know, the world stands as spectators while Israel, the rogue state, once again goes the middle to everyone that believes in peace, justice, and human rights. It's a rogue state because it blatantly defies international law. Its blockade of Gaza for decades is against international law. Starving the people of Gaza is against international humanitarian law. And now it has intercepted a boat carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza and did so in international waters, which is illegal and amounts to an act of piracy. Yet no one can do anything to stop this rogue state.
Why do you think
not
that
the United,
I mean,
not the United Nations, nobody.
I've followed
yes, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, I'll tell you why. Even the United Nations can do nothing. And the reason is quite simple, because it is completely supported and protected by the leading terrorist rogue state in the world, and that is the United States of America.
Okay, got that. AB making his point. He says the USA is the leading terrorist rogue state in the world. I wonder whether you're going to concur with him on that. Another comment on foreigners. Anonymous, hello.
How are you?
Yeah, how's it, man? Go for it.
So it's Anonymous here. I'm staying in Heidelberg Ward 10 in Jimson Park. You know, Ashraf, it's so painful. This guy was talking about the illegal foreigners solely for something. They must pick up and do what they want to do. We can support them. You know, it's so painful to see the foreigners got an electricity, free water. It's your neighbor. You, municipality, cuts off the electricity for you. You don't have electricity, but the foreigner who doesn't pay anything is got electricity on your next door. You know, I've got a problem, Ashraf. I report my electricity, I think it's 2 years back now. The contractor, they were fixing the road. They cut my cable for electricity that supplies me with the electricity. I report to municipality, we've got a councillor for DA in that Ward 10 in Heidelberg. They said I have to pay 47,000. I report that case. Since the contractor cut that cable, I told the municipality guys, they came there, they said the contract is the responsibility of the contractor to fix that thing. The contractor bypassed the cable. On my keypad where I'm putting the electricity, I can't buy electricity. It's now close to 3 years. I report every time when somebody is reporting electricity, I'm reporting that, and the councillor knows that. Today they have cut my electricity off. They said I must come pay 47,000 rand. I connect the electricity illegally. But the foreigner next to me, he's paying all these municipality guys the bribe to supply him with the electricity. Even the municipality guys who are working for the municipality, they bypass the electricity. But there's no one who's complaining about that. Me, I'm fighting to go to municipality to tell them they must come to sort that problem out. But instead they send a person, they pay that person to come and disconnect my electricity. But they refuse to send a guy who have to come and fix. I don't know what to do.
So how do you feel about that in just one line? How do you feel?
I'm feeling very bad, Ashraf. I'm a father of kids who are. By now it's so cold. There is no electricity in my house. My wife but even one lady of a white person can go there by municipality. You see all the 4 cars, municipality cars are parking at that lady's house. The husband is not there at work. Me, I have to leave the job and go fight for them and come back empty-handed. I don't have electricity. I don't know what
to
do.
All right, Anonymous, I tell you what, I mean, it's a terrible story, for people, and for many people, they get cut because they can't afford to pay, and they really can't afford to pay because there's just no money. There's no money. There's not enough jobs, and the expenses are too high. But I'll tell you what. Let's see if we can follow up on the story. If you can maybe just leave your details with Keys, my producer. I don't promise you anything, but let's just see if you can leave it with him, and let's see if we can pick up on that story, Anonymous. So sorry. I mean, it's just a reflection of the frustration that we all face at some stage or the other, isn't it? Mike in Newlands, go for it. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Ashraf. Yes, I just want to say credit where credit is due. I mean, we continue to complain in this country about illegal immigrants, and I agree. I've got no problem with immigrants at all, but they must come into the country legally, and I think everybody in this country wants that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let's enforce our borders and protect our citizens and get the best people into our country. And that is what the great President Trump is doing. He's carrying out what the majority of voters in America wanted. He was swept into power, majority black, white, Indian, colored, I don't know, you name it, they voted for him because they want a country where their borders are protected and illegal immigrants are not allowed to stay. And that is why he's enforcing ICE. And I think it's very hypocritical of many, many people. Lots of callers are complaining about Trump, but at the same time, in the same breath, they're complaining about illegal immigrants in our country. We need some Trump leadership in this country. And another thing is...
but I mean, you can't, the truth is you can't, I hear what you're saying about illegal immigrants in America, but doesn't mean you must have Trump leadership for everything else. I mean, that suggests that he's right on everything. He's right on everything.
Yeah, but look at, we're about to lose 950 jobs, Ashraf, at Firestone Tires. We're losing them because we don't do we don't protect our own industries. We've got cheap tires coming in from China and all over the world, and we're not protecting our own industry. That's exactly what Trump is doing, and that's another thing we want. But no, we all go crazy when Trump does something.
Mike, thanks for that, Mike and Newlands. I appreciate your time. And again, we do have diversity of opinions here. There's no question about that. Would I want to have to change that? Not at all, isn't it? Let's get a comment on the People's Poet call that he made about an hour ago, I think it was.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. I'm so happy to hear Mr. Mbuli's voice. It's been long. I last saw him during Lundi Chamacha's memorial service in Grace Bible Church in Soweto. We took pictures. Oh, it was nice. What a humble soul. Good afternoon, Mr. Mbuli.
You're happy to hear his voice. There we are. Let's see if I can pick up another one which actually relates to the judge. It almost seems to have been forgotten now in the midst of all the other things we've been speaking about.
Afternoon, Ashraf. The judge has got nothing to apologize. You can hear he didn't intend to apologize. He was requested by his wife only to just apologize. He has got nothing to apologize. This guy Muniz, he just make a delaying tactic, man. Those people, they're paying him a lot of money for nothing. You see? I thank you, Peter in Krugerthorpe.
Thanks, Peter. You're saying it's all about the wife telling him, which he did say so, by the way. And that's when he apologized. Not enough, according to many. Right, let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock.
Ultimate Value is opening an account with 34 benefits while getting her a treat. Ultimate Success is getting her the ballet shoes that you promised. With a 2,000 Rand balance booster, Ultimate Goals is living life on your own terms with a credit card with 0 monthly fees. Absa Ultimate Banking is about having it all in one account for 98 Rand per month. Apply online now. Your story matters. Absa, subject to affordability and scoring. T's and C's apply. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider.
Concern over meat prices and a global summit on the ocean. Good day to you. The CEO of the Southern African Agri Initiative, Francois Rousseau, says government should take greater measures in dealing with the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. He says if left unchecked, the outbreak will mean farmers will no longer be able to move their cattle or pay workers' wages. He says this will also affect consumers because the price of red meat will go up.
The biggest knock is, of course, immediately to the farmers as they are unable to deliver to this facility. And, of course, all our exports to China have been immediately halted. This will now cause, in the very short term, increase of red meat onto the shelves, which will mean lower prices in the short term. And then in the longer term, as farmers keep their weaner calves away because of this lack of being able to deliver and the lower prices, it will mean an increase in prices in the longer term.
7 detainees and police have sustained injuries after a police truck transporting detainees overturned on the R56 in KwaZulu-Natal. Police spokesperson Robert Nechaunda.
A police truck carrying detainees from Pietermaritzburg to Kokstad hit the guardrail and capsized on the R56 road in the Richmond area. The detainees and police officers sustained injuries during the accident. The truck was being escorted by 4 police vehicles and the accident scene secured, ensuring that detainees remain in custody.
The weather warning for disruptive rain issued by Weather SA for large parts of the Eastern Cape has been downgraded from level 5 to level 2. The advisory indicates that the level of rain can still lead to localized flooding and damage to infrastructure. The mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, Babalwa Lubisha.
Even though the levels have dropped, our joint operational center for disaster management will still be open and be ready for any occurrence. Even the one of UNIC will be open so that any eventuality that might come, we are ready.
Professor Caesar Nongunga has been announced as the new president of the African Transformation Movement, or ATM, replacing Vuletwa Zungula. The party announced the move in a statement, saying the decision was made by the National Executive Committee to separate the roles of party advocacy and organizational building. Zungula has been president of the ATM for 7 years, while Nongunga is the founder of the party. The ATM's Zaman Shona.
Under President Zungula's stewardship, the ATM has grown from its modest beginnings to a formidable force advocating for economic transformation and the upliftment of the marginalized communities across our nation. President Zungula continues as party leader in Parliament, where he will continue his tireless work in advocating for the emancipation of the downtrodden and ensuring that their voices are heard. As we welcome Professor Caesar Nongunga into his new role as president, we acknowledge his profound vision for the ATM.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has told the Global Summit on the Seas that it's important to protect the deepest oceans. The international authority has jurisdiction over the ocean floor outside national waters. It's meeting next month to discuss a code to regulate mining of the mineral-rich sea floor. Guterres says it's a pressing matter.
Nations are now addressing seabed mining. I support the ongoing work of the International Seabed Authority on this important issue. The deep sea cannot become the Wild West.
Top story, the CEO of the Southern African Agri Initiative says government should take greater measures in dealing with the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goes.
Okay, this is important for you to make a note of. The news brought to you by Absa Ultimate Banking. Apply online to get 34 benefits subject to affordability and scoring. Benefits may be subject to limitations. Terms and conditions apply. Absa is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. And I tell you what, if you didn't get it the first time round, you better get it now. This is brought to you by Absa Ultimate Banking. Apply online to get 34 benefits subject to affordability and scoring. Benefits may be subject to limitations. Terms and conditions apply. Absa is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
In sports, Thembi Kgatlana left out of Banyana Banyana's WAFCON squad and Robinson to step down as New Zealand rugby chief. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 westbound has a crash before the R511 Diepsloot exit. The N1 northbound in Midrand, slow moving towards Samrand Road, and Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound, a stationary truck at Key Ridge, and on the N2 southbound, an earlier crash after Sabai Drive exit has been cleared, but traffic remains slow moving. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound has an incident reported before Durban Road. Police are on the scene. Lower Long Street is closed between Walter Sisulu Avenue and Jetty Street due to a police incident, and Viking Way eastbound in Epping, slow moving towards the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
We're extending the sunshine on Mzansi's favorite adventure SUV with Ford Blue Sky offers. For just $849,999, a new Everest XLT could be yours. Glide through the burbs or power through nature's toughest with a 3.5-ton brake towing capacity. You'll even get 4x4 driver training through Ford Family Promise for free. Head to a Ford dealer and get your new Everest XLT for just $849,999. T&Cs apply.
What if you open up more? Open up to learning and experiencing more of Mzansi and abroad? What if you open up culture and explore the extraordinary from music to drama and the latest fashion? What if you open up your wild side, discover a world of skyscraping cities and brown sugar beaches? What if you open up your kitchen and immerse yourself in cuisines from all corners of the world? What if you open up your voice with all eyes on you without being seen? What if you open up your morning to lekker conversations and world-class entertainment? What if you open up more?
SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what youth-focused issues the G20 should incorporate ahead of the summit. And we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
We are going to talk about the judge pretty shortly with Tebogo Ditsejo. Now, just picking up on the conversation we had earlier on regarding the flotilla. So here's an interesting one from Francesca Albanese, of course, is the UN special reporter covering the issues in the Palestine region. And she said, while Madeleine, which is the name of the boat, right, must be released immediately, every Mediterranean port should send boats with aid, solidarity and humanity to Gaza. They shall sail together. United, they will be unstoppable. And then saying hashtag breaking the siege is a legal duty for states and a moral imperative for all of us. And, you know, that's not all. I'm just picking up the range of opinions that we get from different people. Malala Yousafzai saying the Madeleine was carrying baby formula and aid. The Israeli government is starving children by day while bombing their homes by night. The stoppage and detention of activists on the Madeleine is an act of cowardice by Israel. Preventing food and medical supplies from reaching people in need is a violation of international law. Israel must release all the brave activists, allow aid to Gaza immediately, commit to a permanent ceasefire, let Palestinians live in dignity and peace. And I'll just end with this one. Then you've got a range of opinions on that from South Africa's Thuli Madonsela saying, heroes who change the world despite and to conquer adversity are not exempt from fear. They let commitment give them the courage to trump fear. You are a hero, Greta, and that's referring to Greta Thunberg. You are a hero, Greta, and all the brave souls on the Madeleine humanitarian flotilla that carried much-needed food to deliberately starved people of Gaza. Right, that's from Professor Thuli Madonsela. Right, let's get to the issue of the judge with Tebogo Ditshego after this.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had opinions from the judge. In fact, I don't know if anybody has said up to now that his apology, first of all, his initial pronouncements were spot on, and then his apology, well, I think, no, people did say he was right a few days ago. A lot of people actually commented, to be fair. But today, nobody said he was spot on, and nobody said his apology was spot on. In fact, they were very critical of how he's come across so far. I'm referring to Judge Mogat Leng and his apology for his remarks, right, and him calling himself racist. I'm not saying it. That's what he said, right? I talked about stereotypes. In fact, I remember saying that very clearly. Now, let's get another thought in terms of what this does for the reputation of a judge, and therefore goes back to the points of, what can and can you not say in public spaces. Tebogo Ditshego is the CEO of Ditshego Media. Appreciate your time, Tebogo. Good to connect, as always, on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Right. So let me start with this. If you were in a position to advise the judge after he made his comments, what would you have told him?
Well, I would have, firstly, I would have loved the opportunity to interact with him prior to him making these statements, because we do speak to our clients and we provide them with media training and social media training. And a part of that would have been, the concepts around professionalism. So it would have been nice to brief him, beforehand to avoid this. But briefing him after the fact, I think, yes, the apology is correct. And he also provided context in terms of his position, his history, and that it wasn't really his intention to come across as racist. But it's never a good idea in a professional setting, to stereotype any audience.
So, that's the point that I made early on, that for me, it's not so much whether the service is shoddy. The service is shoddy in so many parts of South Africa. It's when you apportion that to an entire, community or tribe on the basis of their skin color or their ethnicity or their religious beliefs, and say, that's why, as opposed to what other people would do. And that's what the problem that you find with too, right?
Yes, absolutely. And, the legal fraternity has its own regulations. And, of course, such comments, if you look at the training and the codes of conduct, it wouldn't be acceptable. But I think at the back of our mind, we must think about what it means to be professional. And I think the simple way to understand it would be to have your stakeholders' best interests at heart. So before making any statement, you need to really ponder on whether or not this is in the best interests of your stakeholders. But in the legal profession, you need to also think about what is in the best interest of justice, the legal fraternity, and the perception that people have of our legal system. That is very important, and I think that it wouldn't have passed scrutiny in a professional setting, in any kind of setting, let alone in the legal perspective. Yeah.
So the judge made these pronouncements anyway without asking your advice. I'm just noting that in the conversation we just had, and then he spoke now, and he's apologized, but he's also drawn on his closeness to so many people who played a huge role in terms of the struggle in human rights, and he's made that point.
Yes.
Does his apology go far enough? Is it convincing?
Well, it's difficult to assess whether or not it's it's convincing, but he did seem to be heavily remorseful. When I looked at his body language, he also looked very sad. It looked like he could have broken down into tears. Remember, he also mentions his late son. And he said that his late son was also an advocate, and he would have been very disappointed by his comments. So they were very heartfelt, I would say. And I do think that, to a certain degree, it was convincing that he did really mean it.
What about, now, I may have missed it, but in his apology, he never, I don't think he truly addressed the issue of stereotypes. That there's been an issue of service delivery problems. There's been like tardiness, in this case, a legal person preferring to run the comrades rather than anything else. And then he took upon himself to link that to an entire psyche of people. That part I don't think he actually addressed, did he?
You're correct. I think to a large degree there was a lot of ego in what he said, a lot about him proving himself as somebody who would not discriminate, against a particular population. And I think he should have also thought about addressing the actual issue. I don't think he was wrong in saying that, it is unacceptable for you to use the Comrades Marathon as an excuse not to come, to such an important trial, considering how long it has taken, and that people have an opinion that it's justice delayed, justice denied. But also he should have said, okay, I think I did take a principled stance, but I was not supposed to insert other people who are not actually involved in this, factually speaking, in this matter. I was also concerned about when he said that if you would like me to recuse myself, I will recuse myself at any point in time if you think that I don't know what I'm doing. I think that was a bit too argumentative. He could have been a little bit more sensitive in that regard and not throw his hands, to the people and say, no, if you want me to go, I can go. Yeah.
So here is a position. You've got a judge, is very much a public figure, also a hugely responsible position with great influence, right? You could say effectively he's taken the wrong off-ramp, and he's apologized today. Does that put him back on the right off-ramp on the highway, or does he still have more to do?
So it's such a complex question and a very important question to say, in a crisis like this, where you have stereotyped a group of people unjustifiably in a professional setting, whether or not apologizing is sufficient. And I would say that it is necessary, but I wouldn't say that it is sufficient. I believe that accountability is going to be very important. So he needs to look at ways in which he can atone for what he has done. And as a judge, he would know how to do that. There are many people who would be accused of hate speech, and they would be, held accountable. Maybe they do community service and so on and so forth. To a certain degree, he also said that, if I am racist, I'm not aware that I'm a racist. So he would have to say, what he needs to go to the root cause of what made him say such a thing, and look for ways in which he can resolve it, whether it's going for counseling, whether it's, doing more community outreach, so that he can sensitize himself to such issues.
What about, moving forward, and going back again to where you sit in the communication space, right? So we did say, if you wish he had asked you beforehand. So if he had possibly briefed you beforehand, someone like yourself, what would you have told him in terms of should he say anything or what should he say?
So we provided social media masterclasses where this particular issue was addressed, where we spoke about when you are in a public platform, use it to build bridges, do not use it to burn bridges. Do not stereotype based on race, religion, background, sexual preferences. You need to look at ways in which you can build, your brand, build relationships, and not do anything to compromise your brand. So this would have been addressed directly, in terms of briefing him beforehand. But I would always say to anyone who wants to get into the public space or whenever you're in a professional setting, you need to understand that professionalism is a selfless course of action. And it is a process of putting your personal feelings aside and having the best interests of your stakeholders. So you must always think of that, in a professional setting.
And that's where we can leave it. Appreciate your time and certainly got us thinking and may well get the judge thinking if he listens to this podcast after he has some maybe rest time tonight. Appreciate your time, Tebogo Ditshego from Ditshego Media. There we are. Well, pick up on that. I mean, you're the audience, so one is what he said, but now you're listening to a communications expert. What do you make of what Tebogo said in terms of what was said and what was not said and what he ought to have said? And while you think about that, maybe you'll pick up on Helen Zille, because we're going to talk about her and why Joburg right after this.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime. Because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. S3, open up.
They say sharing is caring, but not in football. Bafana Bafana and Club M refuse to share points. They're both hunting for vital points. This is the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025. Catch the spectacular action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mauritius. This Tuesday, 10 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric, mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
One thing about politics is so amusing and entertaining. So as you know, I was in Cape Town last week at the launch of the One Young World event to confirm that Cape Town will be the host city for One Young World next year in November, right? And there'll be 2,000 of the brightest young South Africans will be there. Now, in the light of all of that, the Minister of Tourism, who was Patricia Lille, was there, and she spoke and she made the point, I'm speaking to you on behalf of the President of the Government of National Unity. And that point stood out for me, and I say that because of what we're going to talk about next. You may have heard the story over the weekend. These things best get left for the weekends, isn't it? That the DA chairperson of the Federal Council, that's Helen Zille, has confirmed that she is, and this is the key word, she's considering running for Joburg mayor. She's not saying she is, she's considering it. And the reasons would be obvious, that Joburg, on the one hand, is a complete mess. There's no nice way to say it. And they see an opportunity for them to make a plan and get it Joburg right. And I suppose common sense tells me if they get Joburg right and Cape Town right, well, then it will mean that people like you and me saying, hey, man, maybe we should consider them. I mean, that would be the story, right? But is there more to it than that? So the big question is, can Zille fix Joburg? Now, earlier on, Helen Zille spoke to John Carrick on the lunchtime show here on SAFM, and this is what she had to say.
Can you confirm if you're considering becoming a mayor of the city of Joburg?
Yes, I am absolutely considering, but I've still got to take a decision.
There's a lot to think about. Your family's in Cape Town. I've read reports that your husband won't move up to Joburg. What's going through your mind at the moment?
Well, I'm weighing all of these things up. You know, I am very committed to Johannesburg. I was born there. I grew up there. I owe Joburg a lot, and I love Joburg a lot. And it makes me feel very sad when I see what's happening to Johannesburg. I know what an enormous amount of work it's going to be to stop the rot and start turning it around, put it that way. It's going to be an enormously difficult job. And I'm just got to think whether I really want to take on this job now.
What's motivating you to do it?
Well, South Africa can't work unless Johannesburg works. It's as simple as that. Johannesburg is South Africa's economic heartland, and it needs to work to attract investment, growth, and jobs. And the most crucial thing we need in South Africa is jobs, but nobody's going to invest where you don't get reliable services, where water doesn't come out of taps, where the lights don't go on when you switch them on, where you can't transport anything on the roads. And unless we get that right, we're not going to have investment, which is necessary for growth and jobs. And we've got to fix that crisis in South Africa. We've got to get people out of poverty. And the only way you can get them out of poverty sustainably is through jobs.
As the Federal Council chairperson, why would you want to be the mayor of the DA? Where are the mayor of Joburg? Where are the other DA candidates?
Well, I hope they're all applying. You know, in the DA, we don't coronate people. We select people in a very rigorous process. And I hope a lot of people are applying and putting their hat in the ring. And I hope if I do decide to do that, they'll give me a run for my money.
Helen Zille, not talking about other parties giving her a run for the money, starting with people within the DA. Maybe that's just a nice way to say it, isn't it? I mean, logically, I would think that if she's going to stand for the DA, she's going to give compelling reasons why she needs to be the candidate for mayor of Joburg. Let's get the thoughts of Professor Kagiso TK Pue, who is the Professor of Political Science and Governance at the Wits School of Governance. Appreciate your time, Prof. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Evening, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. I mean, look, let's look at the obvious things. Joburg's a mess. That's a given, right? And there's also poor leadership. That's a given. But let's flip it around, okay, which is I'm looking at the political games that people play, the chess games, right? What's the opportunity here from a DA Helen Zille perspective for them to throw Zille into the ring as the candidate, as the mayor, potential mayor for that city?
Well, two things. One, it kind of clears the pathway and makes a great communication message to Joburg to say, we, as the party, we take you guys so seriously, and we understand that you're in dire straits, that we literally are bringing the person that sort of engineered the rise of the DA from the city of Cape Town all the way to being the premier of the Western Cape. And then secondly, it's almost painting a picture. Said, let's say she doesn't accept, but enough of communication has been made to say that the DA is taking Joburg quite seriously. And sometimes when you go into these types of elections where they've not really had an outright majority in any party, I think since 2016, it does then need you to kind of paint a picture of how seriously you're going to take this. And I think, look, the DA saying they want to take Joburg, if they do well, let's say Zille is not the candidate, but they get enough of a majority. What we've seen from other places is that when they do get a majority, it opens up the province. As you correctly said, people might say, listen, if they've fixed Joburg, if you can turn Joburg around, surely you can then take the whole of Gauteng.
Well, I mean, maybe that's the point. The stakes are pretty high. Now, the logical one would be, reflect on what she's done in the city of Cape Town or let's say the Western Cape, right? But the question is, has she done well? Has she done well for the people of that region?
Look, we can only judge her, and I look the other matrices you can use on what she did when she was mayor. She took the mayorship in. It wasn't a majority. People I think seem to forget it was one of the first coalition governments that people saw in the city of Cape Town, and she was able to grow it from there. So a trick was she was able to stabilize it, and the key thing, even when you speak to her, she speaks about stability. But I think the key success behind Ms. Helen Zille has always been that she brings in a big, what I'd say a leadership. It's a leadership combination, because I think the idea that one person fixes something, while it's notable and makes a great narrative, in truth you need a whole lot of people to really come in and support her. And I think what she was able to do with Cape Town is she was able to lay the bedrock for not only her, but I think after her came the mayor, we've just spoken about, the current Minister of Tourism, and laid the basis for people like even the current mayor of Cape Town. So she has got that track record which no one can take away from her. But the key issue would be, and just listening to what your callers sometimes have said, and even on SMSs, is she does come with a bit of baggage, and it'll be interesting to see how much can people swallow. Because if you're looking for a bulldozer, she can certainly do that. But it's a question of how much can people swallow. And the key thing is, who is she coming with? Because the era of simply saying one individual fixes South Africa is very much over.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that point is correct. That even when Joburg was doing well, it was a collective, and when they made a mess, it's also a collective. And the same may apply to many aspects of the governance of our entire country, not just the city of Joburg, right? But here's the important thing: that not so much whether Zille wants the job or not, but would she be right for Joburg considering where the city is now? And maybe as you answer that, I think the best example of that would be, I reflect on the Springboks that got a hiding against the All Blacks, I think something like 60-0, about 2 years before the World Cup. And then 2 years later, they changed. They appointed Rassie Erasmus. 2 years later, they were world champions, meaning they understood at that stage that they were in a crisis and they had to do something, and you then get a winner to do that. So is she that sort of person?
I'll probably do one bet and think one person we've always ignored in South African rugby is Heineke Meyer and how he turned the Blue Bulls around to what they currently are, which is just a monolith of a winning entity. And you're right in saying South Africa, city of Joburg, is in the pits at the moment. But my worry for it is it will need to be balanced in terms of when we say Joburg is the pits, what exactly are we speaking about? Because if you're speaking about infrastructure, here you're speaking about, infrastructure usually takes between 10 to 15 years for you to really see the benefit. So it's an issue of saying, let's look at the problem and ask that who does the problem really favor? And if you're looking at someone like Mrs. Helen Zille, she's got a very, I'd say, an adroit understanding of infrastructure. She's got an adroit understanding of institutions needing revival, especially having to make tough decisions the city of Joburg will have to make in terms of which of its entities stay as purely public and which of them are going to have to be privatized. And so you're right in saying, if you had to use that example of the Springboks, that she does have that experience. But the key issue will be, do citizens understand what the problems are? And are they going to be willing to give of themselves to say, listen, we might have to give this away so that this works. We might have to, because one of the things people hardly speak about with the city of Cape Town is, if you look at it as a concentric circle, the closer you are to the center, the more you pay. Now, how willing are people going to be in the city of Joburg to pay more rates so that things can be fixed?
Absolutely.
And that's the trick with the Cape Town, is people are willing to pay more begrudgingly because they say, listen, at least I see where my rands and cents go. How willing are citizens of city of Joburg going to be to say, listen, we're giving this new person the trust? Because at the end of the day, this is a trust issue. And if that is what they're willing to give, well, I think it could work. But I think we're going to have to really look at it. What is the problem? What is the proposed solution? And what are the sacrifices citizens are going to be able to take?
And I would think, as we wrap up, much appreciate your time. The stakes are particularly high because if she gets it right, it's very difficult then for others to ignore the DA as a major player going into the actual general election. If she gets it wrong, what then clout does the DA have in terms of making a play for national leadership a couple of years down the line? Stakes high indeed. Well, much appreciate your time. You certainly got us thinking, Prof. Thanks for that, Prof. We're reflecting on Helen Zille as the mayor of Joburg. What a ring that's got. Would you buy into that sort of ring? Think about it. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Greg Close.
A quick look at the headlines. A police captain accused of raping a trainee is being granted bail by the Pretoria Magistrates Court. The CEO of the Southern African Agri Initiative says government should take greater measures in dealing with the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. And Ukraine says Russia's launched nearly 500 missiles and drones, the most so far in a single night. That's SAFM News. I'll have the full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound queuing towards the N1 Diepkloof interchange, the R24 eastbound in Kempton Park queuing towards the R21 Airport interchange, and the N1 northbound in Midrand queuing towards Samrand Road. In KZN, the M4 northbound has a crash near Riverside Road, the N3 westbound a stationary truck at Key Ridge, and the M19 eastbound a crash on the link to the N2 north. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound has a stationary vehicle before Bunga Avenue. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has ramp closure with no access to Browning Road due to a crash scene, and the N1 outbound has heavy traffic towards Old Oak Road due to an incident on the inbound side at Belleville. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, let's once again stay with boardroom politics in South African football. To me?
Yeah, Cape Town Spurs are taking their fight to stay in the Motsepe Foundation Championship to the Johannesburg High Court. The club has filed an urgent application to challenge a recent arbitration decision by advocate Hilton Epstein. Just last week, the arbitrator dismissed a case brought by Spurs and JDR Stars, who claimed that Durban City had used a player who was not properly registered when they played against them. One of the key issues in court will be Rule 52.2 of the NSL Handbook, and sports law expert Manda Chabalala says that this rule was a big reason the Premier Soccer League introduced tighter regulations.
Again, the 40 days talk to the registration of the player, the period of registration, which legitimizes the player. Now, one can easily ask and say, what if I didn't know that this player that has been registered was improperly registered, which renders the player ineligible? But it comes to my attention after the end of the season. Will I then be suffering because of the rules? So that's why I'm saying that the 5 days of 52-3, then it creates a problem of how then do we interpret it? Because the 52-2 is very clear, 40 days after the registration period. So that's how I look at it, and maybe that's why some teams then will prefer to wait until the end of the season, maybe to check if they're safe or not. If they're not safe, then they'll come and make use of the 5 days that is provided for in the rules. So my wish is that it could just be clear as to the 5 days. Is it now for improper registration of the player, or is it something else? Because misconduct can be so many, except for the registration of the player.
Cape Town Spurs fighting very hard not to be relegated. Meanwhile, Banyana forward Thembi Kgatlana has been left out of Coach Desiree Ellis's preliminary squad for the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. According to a statement by the South African Football Association, Kgatlana will miss out of the WAFCON due to personal reasons. Hilda Magaya will also only join the camp late due to her medical assessment, and the national team is drawn in Group B alongside Ghana, Mali and Tanzania. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns captain Themba Zwane says that the squad is relishing the opportunity to challenge themselves against the best with less than 10 days before their opening FIFA Club World Cup match. The Brazilians will face the likes of Ulsan HD in the Inter Camp Coast Stadium later this month in Group F, alongside the likes of Borussia Dortmund of Germany and Fluminense from Brazil. And speaking to FIFA TV as the hype around the World Cup builds up, the midfielder believes that Sundowns will come out of the newly expanded 32-team tournament an improved side.
The excitement will be amazing. You know, that side, they really love football. They support. Obviously, it will be fully packed, and it will be a nice thing for us as players to play in that stage. It's exciting, you know, as a player to go in such tournament, and obviously you want to be playing in that high level and try to see how far can you go and check how far you are as a player, and try to compete with the best.
Still staying with football, Cristiano Ronaldo has confirmed that he will stay at Al Nassr next season. There were reports that the 40-year-old might sign with a new club and possibly play in the Club World Cup. However, Al Nassr sporting director Fernando Hierro has slammed down the rumors, saying that the club is working on a new deal for their CR7. Actually, Ashraf, this past weekend I was reading some of his comments with regards to the Club World Cup, because a lot of people were looking forward, and I was one of them. And I found it very nice and interesting that he was saying that, listen, I understand that people are happy or would be happy for me to play there. However, you can't play football everywhere. You need to know where you're standing, your ground, and
so
that one I'm just going to miss out.
What he's saying is similar to what I've said before.
Yeah.
Never mind what they say in the big money. The Club World Cup cannot compare to winning a Champions League, and it cannot compare to winning a World Cup, which he is trying to make sure that he's fit enough to play in the last World Cup and win it for Portugal. I mean, it would be an incredible... I wish South Africa wins that World Cup, no matter what. Listen, if Bafana plays Portugal, I'll be hoping we can win 5-0, but that's me, right? But if you get my point, that he's being very intentional about what is important versus what's less important.
Absolutely. He also knows that he's growing old and it's almost towards the end of his career. In rugby, Jake White says that the Bulls are holding a lotto ticket going into Saturday's URC final against Leinster and is banking on his senior players to make it count. The Bulls face a formidable Leinster side playing its first URC decider coming off a big win over defending champions at Glasgow. And finally, in basketball, Al Ahly Tripoli and Al Ittihad of Egypt became the first two teams to advance to the semi-finals of the Basketball Africa League played at the Sunbet Arena in Pretoria. In a dominant display, Al Tripoli beat Creole Star from Cape Verde 107-81, while Al Ittihad in the most thrilling game in 20 so far edged out Fuz Rabat of Morocco 86-83 in overtime victory.
I expected that the game will not be easy. Before the game, we talk about this game. It's a knockout game, quarterfinal, so it will be tough, and it's happened. The good issue, the positive side, that we deal with the pressure, we deal with the game, most of the game, in a good way. That's why we won the game. But the other hand, we didn't plan to play like this. We plan to play, the game will be better, okay, to lead more, to end the game in a better way. But I will tell you something, we need this type of games. I thought before 50 days or more, we had good chemistry before, okay, 50 days, and we came back again, so we need time to build that chemistry one more time. I expect that the first two games will not be good, okay, but I expect third game will be better. We have 3 days, we will work on this 3 days, 3 practice, and I hope we will be better in semi-final.
Before I say goodbye, just to look back at my predictions for the weekend, Ashraf, I did say Coco Gauff is going to win. She did win. Mm-hmm. I said the Bulls are going to win. I was spot on. I was wrong about the Comrades men's side winner because I was saying there's going to be a new winner there. However, I was spot on with the women's Gerda Steyn winning yet again.
But that's an easy one. Gerda Steyn's like the easiest pick of the whole lot. I mean, it's a compliment to her, right?
Yeah.
What you didn't pick is the men's French final because you said you have to wait for the semi-finals.
Yes.
But like Alcaraz, wow, I would watch him anytime.
Yeah.
There we are.
That's it.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
They say sharing is caring, but not in football. Bafana Bafana and Club M refuse to share points. They're both hunting for vital points. This is the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025. Catch the spectacular action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mauritius. This Tuesday, 10 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Jimmy, what's that old song, Diamonds Are Forever? That was from a James Bond movie, but maybe not the case with De Beers any longer, is it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. That was certainly a James Bond reference, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it from? No, it wasn't from Die Another Day. It was from before that. It was a Roger Moore one, wasn't it? I'll find the James Bond reference, but diamonds certainly are forever in the eyes of De Beers, because even though Anglo has put up or decided that they want to put up that business for sale, they're still mulling over how they want to do it, and this is all part of Anglo's restructuring and unlocking value for shareholders. We know they've been on this drive since that failed BHP bid to buy them out or to take them over, and so Anglo's decided to kind of unbundle some of its assets, and De Beers being one of them. Interestingly enough, many people might be wondering who then buys SA De Beers. And surprise, surprise, we've already got at least 6 consortiums that are interested in the De Beers business. One of those seems to be the Botswanan government as well. So there's lots to look into there. Someone clearly is still finding value in the De Beers story, and we're going to look at that. I've got the CEO of Deal Leaders International, Andrew Ballman, to take me through that. They specialize in taking a look at these M&A sorts of deals, and I want to look at the De Beers one because it's particularly interesting with the increase in the lab-grown space and what we make of that. But that's one conversation we're going to be having. Then we're also going to be taking a look at results from the team at Alex Forbes and PPC. Both companies gave us annual numbers. We're going to speak to CEOs in both cases to get the sense of how each of those companies performed. From a PPC perspective, it's particularly interesting because of the role that they play in the infrastructure development within the South African landscape and what we, of course, want to be seeing with the South African picture. We know that our Minister of Public Works, as well as our President, have echoed the sentiments of wanting to turn South Africa into a construction site, and that bodes exceptionally well for someone like APPC. So we're going to get a sense from their perspective about what they are optimistic about at the moment. And then we've got a conversation with the team at Makwana Public Relations on the latest SAA developments. South African Airways looks to potentially double its fleet over the next 5 years, but the important question there becomes who's paying for that? Because we've seen a big SAA in the past, we've seen a small SAA as we currently have, and we're kind of starting to see an SAA that wants to be more nimble and strategic. So I want to look at that as well, make sense of what that means for aviation, but what it means for the flights that you and I pay, and whether or not that's going to bring down the cost of flights for our side. And then we're going to wrap up the conversation with a look at navigating offshore investments for our personal finance, because we do personal finance every other Monday. So that conversation is coming up with the team at Crew Invest as well. Before we get to those conversations, a quick sense of how the markets have been moving. The last update, of course, would be the one that you have gotten from Makwe and the team at Makwe Fund Managers. Markets have since closed out the day in positive territory ever so slightly on the all-share side of things, with the all-share up about 5 basis points, the top 40 up about 10 basis points, but resources up about 1%. Industrials were flat, financials were down 0.7%, and hence the very minor move in the all-share and the top 40, cancelling out basically the movement on the resources side. International markets, also a bit of a mixed bag. The biggest gainer in Asian session was the Hang Seng, up about 1.4%. The Nikkei closely behind that, around 0.9% in the green, but the ASX in Sydney was in the red, around 0.25%. European markets, all in the red. The biggest loser there, the DAX, down about 2/3%. The US markets, the S&P is flat, the Nasdaq is up 1/3%. If we look at the commodity side of things, platinum pricing doing exceptionally well. We're now back above $1,200 a fine ounce, 1,220 odd. Palladium is at $1,100 or so. Gold price, $3,330 a fine ounce, similar to where we left it on Friday when you and I looked at that. Brent crude, $66.78 a barrel. Not the best, but still below $70, so I suppose we can take that as a victory. The Rand, 17 Rand 70 against the US dollar. 24 Rand against the British pound. 20 Rand and 22 cents against the euro. And 1 Australian dollar will set you back 11 Rand and 55 cents. 1 Bitcoin, $107,000 a Bitcoin, or in Rand terms, 1.907 million Rand. Just off the 2 million Rand mark, but of course that's stronger Rand, lovely to see. I've got Viv Govender of Rand Swiss joining me on the show later to take a look at some market movements. I want to get his thoughts around the Rand and the gold price and where we go to from here. But of course, that's a conversation we will have shortly after 6 o'clock. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
All right, there we are. So Jimmy Moyana with the SAFM Market Update, 6 to 7 coming up shortly, followed by sport and a whole dose of current affairs all throughout the evening till midnight, and then we do it all again early tomorrow morning. But it's time for your calls, because you're on the pulse, aren't you? Let's hear you.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
So there's still a lot about the judge.
Afternoon, Ashraf. This is Ngabswa Tsikwala. The judge, one is old, but two, for the sake of progress, maybe he's trying to forgive him and forget so that the case can't be dragged anymore. I thank you.
Okay. Forgive and forget is what you say. I wonder whether others would agree, but there's more on that too.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, SAFM listeners. Marumo Mahiki. I want to applaud Judge Mokhatlim for apologizing. He apologized for telling the unwanted truth. I can say it again, unwanted truth. But he should not justify his apology. We know he's not a racist. There's no way he can be a racist.
Okay. Should he apologize for anything then? Or just leave it as is?
I'm not sure if whatever that the old man is mentioning there, it's relevant. Maybe he could have had a media briefing for him to offer us such a long statement of apology. I'm also wondering whether he's okay. Is he okay emotionally, psychologically, mentally? You know? Because this Senzo Maiwa case does not need this. Days Khiba from Klerksdorp.
Okay, there we are. Well, interesting point about just the length and the impact it has on people in that space.
Good afternoon, Altraf. Justice Mokhatling was very stressed on Friday. In fact, the whole trial is stressing him. So this up and down, on and off from court, they're stressing him. He wants to wrap up the case as soon as possible. But we accept his apology, and then it was expected. This is Moroga Tafloko Limpopo.
And there's more on the judge.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Moses here. I just hear a lot of contradictions in the judge's apology. If he cut his teeth in black consciousness movement, as he said, going to as far as being secretary for the Black People's Convention and blah, 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 and all of those things, how then can he ascribe non-professionalism to as he alleges, to a country being run by blacks? I find that very, very contradictory. Thanks.
Well, I'm in agreement with you. And I would hate to think that anybody in a position of higher authority who claims to be progressive would link poor service delivery, which we have in this country, but link it primarily to the fact that people are black and then suggest that white people will do a better job on that. Here's another quick one.
Something about this apology from the judge. Yeah. It's like saying that I'm not racist. All my friends are black. That's why he went to town to talk about his associates, name dropping. Anyway, let's accept his apology.
Okay, there we are. I mean, we are soft-hearted people, aren't we? More on the National Pulse after this.
After school snacks, a bag of chips or maybe some biscuits, instant noodles for lunch. Ultra-processed products such as these may be high in sugar, salt, or saturated fat. Having too much of these products could lead to diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. Our health is in danger. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels now. Sign the petition on heala.org. HEALA.org.
It's a game of two halves, represented by two national flags, and both nations are chasing victory to bring joy to their citizens. This is more than just an international friendly. It is the Southern African Derby. Mzansi's Bafana Bafana face the Mambas of Mars. Catch the incredible action of African football. South Africa versus Mozambique on Tuesday, 10 June at 7 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what youth-focused issues the G20 should incorporate ahead of the summit. And we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply.
Right, this is for you, okay? You can apply online for ABSA Ultimate Banking with 34 benefits while listening to the show. And this is what ultimate success looks like. It's getting your daughter the ballet shoes you promised thanks to a 2,000 Rand balance booster, while Ultimate Goals is living life on your own terms with a 0 monthly fee credit card. ABSA Ultimate Banking is about having it all in one account for 98 Rands per month. Your story matters. ABSA. Subject to affordability and scoring. Benefits may be subject to limitations. Terms and conditions apply. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, it's been about 45 minutes since we last spoke about foreigners. Let's change that as we go to Gqeberha with Lamli. Go for it. Hello.
Yes, hello, Ashraf.
Yep, you're live. Yep.
Am I speaking to Ashraf now?
Yeah, you are live. Go for it. Good talking to you.
Ashraf, I want to respond to Helen Zille.
Yes.
I'm not related to this chap of...
Athol Trollip, yes.
Yes, Athol Trollip. He says, and I agree with him, he says we should be doing something about the foreigners in our country. And that the constitution should be changed.
Yeah.
I agree partly with him. But I want to know from him, Sir Peter, I'm not sure whether he's still there. I want to know from Trollip, now that South Africans who are oppressed in this country for many years are not benefiting from these freedoms, given this constitution that is hailed world over, that is not helping them.
Well, I mean,
that's
will he be
willing?
Yeah.
Will he be willing to accept the change of the constitution in relation to making them benefit? Because if you remember, while he was still a member of the A, they said constitution cannot be changed. So that's what I wanted to know from Athol Trollip as to whether he was willing for that.
Okay, well, I mean, we don't
I'm
know
not
now
sure
because
he's still in the studio.
No, he's long gone. I mean, he's about an hour and a bit ago. So, okay, you've raised the question. I mean, I think you can't say it can never be changed. It can be changed if you get the requisite 2/3 majority. Then whether you'd want to change it is another story completely. Thanks for that call, Malamli from Gqeberha. In fact, here's a comment from, well, I'm not sure who sent it. There's a nice picture. Hi, Ashraf and the National Pulse. Thank you for relentlessly keeping me updated. I just took this photograph down at the beach. Go well. Regards, Nicolette from Hout Bay. Workmen laying some kind of pipes, maybe electrical cables. Well, they were nice. Thanks for sending it here on WhatsApp. Nicolette, by the way, I was in your hood the whole of last week, but for work, never got even close to Hout Bay. The closest was the V&A waterfront, something along that line. Lynn in Kimberley, hello.
Hi, Ashraf.
Hi, go for it.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment on Thuli Madonsela's message that she sent about Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know if she's seen the footage of the kidnapping of the Israelis giving them sandwiches and water. And I wonder what you think has happened to Greta Thunberg's crusade about climate change. Or she just decided that it's actually a better idea to go against Israel and show how much she hates
Well,
people.
I can't speak on her behalf because I don't know what she's thinking. But listen, people can have more than one cause, can't they? Can't they raise an issue of climate change and then they see an injustice elsewhere? They feel they want to speak out for it. That's what may have happened.
Watching this whole flotilla story of hers, it was an absolute self-indulgent, narcissistic trip that she and her comrades took.
Okay, your
and
point.
Thuli Madonsela's comment was uninformed. She hasn't seen what's going on, obviously, and I never thought that I would hear her say something that was nonsensical.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Lynn in Kimberley. Right, let's get to more comments. So do you think Thuli Madonsela was wrong in what she saw, or even Greta Thunberg is wrong in terms of raising the issue of the flotilla. Here's one about the DA.
Good evening, Ashraf. This is Matebula. You know, I can never trust the DA. DA was there in Pretoria. They didn't do much impact when it comes to governing Pretoria. DA was there that time of Herman Mashaba. They couldn't even support their own candidate, Herman Mashaba, and they were the one who put him there. So I don't think Helen Zille can come and change anything in Johannesburg, because she will even want to support the crisis that we have of foreigners in Johannesburg. This is Matebola.
Well, thank you for that. And okay, don't trust the DA is what you say. Here's another on the GNU.
Ashraf, since the formation of this GNU, let me talk about KZN. We're witnessing much improvement, you know. So the combination of the IFP, ANC, and the other smaller parties, they are making wonders here in KZN. Much improvement. Street lights working, police visibility, and so on. Last time I went to Joburg, sometimes last year, I couldn't believe my eyes. The CPT has become a pigsty. I hope Zila can contribute here and make the difference.
Okay,
I trust Philip Mashu.
You trust Philip, right? In fact, Irfan Mangera should qualify, is part of Rise Mzansi. He tweeted today, and I thought it's interesting what he said. He said, let's not pretend the DA is innocent here. The decline in Joburg didn't start yesterday. It accelerated under their watch. The first wave of service collapse hollowed out departments. Anti-poor policies came under a DA-led coalition. They helped break what they now point fingers at. Let me end with that. In fact, I'm not with that. I want to say one other thing as we end, okay? I've got a picture here, they're going to post it just now, of Sinner versus Alcaraz. Now, remember, we're talking about the French Open final, and you may be aware that Alcaraz, the Spaniard, won in 5 sets, one of the greatest finals you're ever bound to see, right? But here's the point in the picture. It's got a picture of him standing, his T-shirt